Please rise.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Angie, roll call. Grandma Snelson is down, Colorado. Congratulations to Julie. Item 1.3, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we amend the agenda to add 2.9 under presentations, Sean Trotter, to discuss employee emails in the CEA. I would move that we add 4.2 under discussion items. That would be discussion of campaigning by staff on school grounds or with school resources. And then I would actually propose cutting 8.0, the executive session. Right now I'm going to leave that as part of my motion. I'm sure discussion will flesh it out a little bit more, but I would at this time move to eliminate it.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? So there's a motion and a second on the floor to add 2.9, Sean Trotter, 4.2, campaign by staff, and to eliminate the executive session. Is there discussion?
So on the discussion side, and I obviously it's an executive session. We can't go too far into it. But what was the purpose of the executive session? What does it fall under?
Personnel.
Okay. I guess then my next point or question would be, obviously we've kind of come around to this once or twice before, the notification of executive session to the public. I don't want to be in a position where we are discussing something where we haven't notified the public that we're having an executive session, what the purpose of the executive session is. There are some rules in statute that allow you to do it on an emergency basis. I guess if there's a purpose for that to be on an emergency basis, if somebody can just explain it to me, and or if it can just wait, we just wait and notify the public as we're required. So I just leave that to anybody.
I guess my question would be, I mean, I'm not sure what the executive session is, but I'm assuming that we need one, and if there's anything that happens during the board meeting that results in something of a personnel matter, we can at any time add an executive session because that would be the way that the board would discuss it. So I guess I disagree with the idea that somehow or another we're precluded from adding an executive session.
The way I understand the statute and the way we presented that, it's not under the emergency clause. Unless a newspaper requires it in advance. If they do, then you're supposed to notify them. If they don't, the only requirement by statute, as I understand it, for to hold an executive session is to notify all the board members. And they have all been notified in advance. We take an extra step and put it on the website just to go above and beyond. So I don't want to debate the revised statute. You can interpret it any way you want to, but that's why the executive session is on the, that's how we're adding it to the agenda. And it was added late. Mr. Strumke is correct. We did add that just this afternoon at the request of two other board members.
So am I understanding that it is actually on the website then?
Yes.
And Ray, is this something that has to be handled tonight? Is there something pressing on this? I mean, obviously you can't go into details, but is this?
I think if you're going to, yeah, probably tonight or not at all.
Okay. Then I would amend my motion at this time to take that portion. It's easier just to say to add 8.0 back in. I guess I'll wait to see what happens at the executive session. But I would amend it then to just add those other two items without deleting anything.
Jenny, are you? Okay. So the revised motion is to add 2.9 and to add 4.2. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Student recognition. Mr. Smith.
We have a problem, Mr. Fulkerson.
No.
I have a problem, actually.
Okay. Well, how can I help you with
Well,
that?
Mr. Holt and I had a communication problem. We thought we were going to get the kids notified. Neither one of us did that. So would it be possible to do this next month?
Certainly.
All right.
That is not.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
How about Mr. Seedig?
We've got a problem.
We have a problem. Houston, we have a problem.
I can bring these people up, right?
You can.
I can give you just a little background first. Maybe you don't realize that Troy High School plays in a 4A class. There's only one class in tennis. So there's 16 schools. So what these student athletes accomplished were against the Cheyenne, Gillettes, and Sheridans and such. I think there's two main reasons they accomplished what they did, and the first one is the help that we came here with. They were freshmen. Some of the parents and the Cody Tennis Association and some of the players came asking for your help to build a new six-court tennis complex, which you did a great job of, as did the Cody Shoshone Rec and the Park County and Hallstock and Rotary Club and Booster Club. And we went from the worst facility in 1 year to the best in 1 year. And I think that really contributes to what they accomplished this year. Because we had, our quality of practices were a lot more so than in past years. And I was able to watch them improve a lot. Plus, I think they had more of a desire to play more than last season. So what they accomplished was due to that, and then just due to their determination and the will to prepare to have success. So if I can introduce them, I'll introduce the girls first. And our doubles, come on up, Jessica Morales and Katie Arnold. And they got second at state in the two doubles, and they made all state, and they were also all conference and conference champions. Number one singles player, Tessa Blau. Tessa played number one doubles last year with Shady Schusman, and they only lost one match. Now it's the state championship in number one doubles. So this is Tessa's second year as All-State, and she's only a sophomore. And she captured the consolation championship at state, so that makes her the third best player in the state of Wyoming. And then there are three doubles. Evan Wambecki. Evan's partner is Stan Ogden. Stan, you may know, his father is the principal in Poughkeepsie, so he was able to join us this year, and him and Evan got second at state, and they both made all state, and this was Evan's fourth year playing, and they got after really well, and almost won the state championship. To get state runner-up was great, so congratulations. Now we got Zach McIsaac and his partner, Kaiski. Kaiski, that's what I call him. He's an exchange student from Poland, and his name is Kajetan. Kajetan? No, that's good. You say it out loud. And Zach played when he was in 7th grade, and these guys got him to come out this year. He hadn't played tennis since the 7th grade, but he's an athlete, soccer goalie, and quick and fast, and he's got fire in his eyes, and for an exchange student or first-year player to come together and get second in state in number two doubles was a real great accomplishment. So, congratulations. Bailey Lasco, our number one doubles. They were on the courts a lot this summer, as the other kids were too, and playing in tournaments. And they stayed late sometimes after practice, as some of the other kids did also. And they had a goal, and they were determined to get their figurine as, I guess, is it mortality or immortality? Immortality. So that was kind of, they told me that was their goal, to get those figurines and the statuettes and the lot. As all of them. So, and they finished third. So they're the third best doubles in the state of Wyoming. Just add, our boys team was all seniors this year. That's the first time that I can remember that, having an all-senior team. So we'll have to rebuild. But our girls, we're going to reload. I think our girls team may be better than last year. The boys did get third at state. The girls got fifth. The girls are conference champions. And last year they were regional champions. So, thank you.
I want to remind the public, I forgot to say this earlier, if anybody wants to address the board, to please fill out a sheet and drop it off up front. Mr. Kepke.
All right, so gives me great honor to announce the Employee of the Month, or Employee Recognition. And she is only slightly grumpy that she's here because she has things she has to be at, but I blame Tim and Jeremiah, so it worked out perfectly that I didn't have to take the heat. The Employee Recognition for this month is for Amanda Griffin, and here's the nomination that came with it. I would like to acknowledge Amanda Griffin for her tireless work on Midas. She is always kind and helpful and does not let her frustration ever show. She finds a solution and answers emails immediately. We can do our work with students because Amanda is ready to help at a moment's notice. Amanda has worked diligently and tirelessly to ensure that our district's transition to Midas has been a success. She has spent hours upon hours working to be sure that the district needs meet Midas's capabilities. We are so thankful for her efforts and hard work. So.
Thank you. So I'm going to break from the agenda briefly. We have a trustee presentation. One of the things that we take seriously and try to promote is education and participation by the trustees at training and regional and state and national events. And Trustee Simone has received an award from the Wyoming School Board Association based on her commitment to education, to self-education. She is now a certified master school board member. It's fun to catch her off guard. Item 2.3, Cody Middle School Close-Up Club Proposal. Mr. Duncan, Mrs. Fulton.
Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, I'm honored tonight to recognize two of our outstanding teachers at Cody Middle School who've come up with a proposal to the board to develop a close-up club for Cody Middle School students. We feel that this will be an outstanding opportunity for a number of our students to experience an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. So I'd like Mr. Duncan and Mrs. Fulton to come forward. They're going to explain more about that, and certainly if you have any questions and that, we'll be glad to answer that. But we really do feel like this is a tremendous opportunity for our kids and Cody Middle School in terms of our school district. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to these two wonderful teachers.
Thank you. Well, thanks, guys, for giving us the opportunity to do this. I have just a quick PowerPoint. Is our if I connect up on that?
Sure.
Is it the boardroom one? Okay. Did you guys all get one of the brochures? I think that was kind of in the packet there, so if you need anything. All right, there it goes. All right. Well, again, I'm Travis Duncan. This is Amy Fulton there, and it was kind of weird how this proposal came around this year, moving up to 8th grade, teaching history and civics. I thought, what a great idea to get out and maybe try to go to Washington, D.C. It's something that I had entertained when I was teaching in Meeteetse there, and lo and behold, it sounded like Tim and Kelly and Amy were having some of the same conversations that might be an opportunity that our students would really benefit from. And so about, I guess, first couple of weeks, we were able to get together and do that. I put a proposal for a few different programs out there. Close Up was one of the most, probably widely recognized, one of those, EF Tours, Explorica. There was a number of different opportunities out there, but this one really stuck with me, and just so happens that Amy has been a Close Up sponsor for a number of years with other districts there. And so as we got to talking, it really seemed like that this fit the bill for what we're looking for. And I think particularly it's more than just a tour of Washington, D.C., but their mission is really to get out there and help inform, inspire kids to become active citizens. And so on that, it's always difficult when you think of, this goes outside the realm of a normal field trip, but to me, I think the benefit of going on a trip like this is to provide probably the most memorable experience for middle school formative memories there. This is a chance to really immerse them in all of the different aspects and cultural opportunities that Washington, D.C. has a chance to offer there. And so that's what I really hope that we can get out of this, is a good immersible experience where they're actually experiencing Washington, D.C., just not hitting all of the sites and tourist destinations. This is a nonprofit organization there, so that was a characteristic of this that I liked. They're not out doing this for money. And more importantly, I think something for our district too is that it's nonpartisan. So you're getting a nonpartisan experience there. They've been around since 1971. Over 800,000 people have taken advantage of Close Up throughout the years, and each year they take about 16,000 students, both in the high school and the middle school. Typically, I thought this was normally a high school opportunity, but lo and behold, they have something directed right at the middle school. We were looking a couple of the proposed dates. June 4th, it's a 4-day program. We'd be leaving on Sunday, coming back on Wednesday. June 4th is one of the ideas thrown out there. We just got to see, pending approval from the board and from the school district, exactly when that would happen. June 18th is another one. We'd be out there 4 days, 3 nights. And the educational side that I mentioned before is just really the focus on current issues, historical development of Washington, D.C., and of our government, and more importantly, I think, to help kids make them active citizens. And so, as you guys know, I think one of the benefits of this is just getting a chance to meet with students from around the country. While they're, and Amy can talk a little bit more about that, while they are a core group coming right here from Cody, Wyoming, they're also rooming and going to classes and night classes, day classes with other students. And so I think having those diverse ideas and diverse experiences from around the country is a really important part of that. One of the other parts about Close Up maybe that Explorica or EF Tours didn't have is the learning part of it. What really are their methodologies behind there? And so you can see on there that one of the things that they care a lot about is experiential learning. And that's it, just taking time, getting in there, experiencing this, and using Washington, D.C. as the classroom to get out and really experience what government is. They can sit in class and listen to me chatter on all about it, but until they actually get out and experience what that is, that's what I'm really excited about. Cooperative learning, like I said before, they're getting the chance to meet with everybody from around the nation and other big schools, city schools, rural schools, and really work together to learn from all different cultural backgrounds. The other part there is, and Amy can talk a little bit more about this too, is the issue center. So we're looking taking things that are in the news today and things that are happening in the government today and using those to really figure out how did our democracy develop and what impacts is that going to have on kids' futures. So just the last point there is just helping kids make really informed decisions. And that's my goal, this year with the 8th graders is, hey, make your own decisions. Get out there, experience this, do your research, and become involved in that. The schedule, arrival on Sunday there. We'd be taking off from Billings. Get there, have the welcome supper. You can see on there Monday going around to the different sites there, the U.S. Capitol, Supreme Court, FDR, Jefferson Memorial, all the different war memorials out there, and then having the mock Congress workshop would be that. Tuesday, still visiting different memorials around town, and then you would conclude that day with night activities in there as well, where students are actually getting to work on the educational piece of it. Wednesday, same thing, have a little bit of classes, and then before we're heading out, get a chance to go around to a couple more spots before heading off, and then we'd be home there. The total cost, this is the kicker, it's a little expensive there. And, good things, sometimes they cost a little bit. $17.47. That went up a little bit just in the time when I first started looking at that. You know how airfares are. $17.47, that's going to be the cost of it. That includes airfare from Billings, Logan International, all their academic materials, their hotel accommodations, all meals and things like that. But I think one of the really great things about this program here, too, is if you take a look there, the 24-hour supervision of students in their hotels. And so at night, it's not necessarily Amy and I on the floor with the kids. They have a night monitor that stays in the hallway throughout their entire stay there. So they have somebody looking out over the kids, looking for their well-being, and making sure they're in their wing where they're supposed to be. That all admission fees to the different spots as we're touring around, tips, gratuities, and then a little bit of medical coverage. Of course, if they want to spend a little additional money there for their souvenirs and things like that, that'll be additional to the $17.47. As we start talking about this, there are a couple of deadlines that we need to think about there. There is a $400 non-refundable deposit due by February 3rd. The key about that, it is non-transferable to another student. If that student pays that and decides something comes up, non-refundable and non-transferable. Our final payment is April 20th. After that, there is no refunds. And so I think being straightforward with families, letting them know those dates and what the ramifications of not meeting or of backing out of the trip in case something happens. We just have to be upfront with folks on that. How are we going to help kids do that? And there's like I said, they're a nonprofit organization. We're looking for donations. Those donations could be tax deductible from community members and businesses, and that's something that we have definitely talked about, going out looking for bigger donations. There are scholarships available for students in need. I talked to our representative that we're dealing with for this region, and she said, for every 10 kids, we get about $900 or $800 to $1,000 in scholarship money that for students in need. If they have the will, if they don't have the resources in order to make this happen, we can split that up any way we see necessary. But it is $1,000. It's not a lot, but every little bit helps. Some ideas that we've kicked around. Close Up has this idea of the 40 for 40. It's a letter going out to 40 different people that they know trying to raise funds. Concession stands, we've talked to Lee and Tony. They have a couple opportunities for us. Of course, the wrestling, our home wrestling meet, Tony said we could get in on there. Family night, parent requests, and we've really left the fundraising opportunities open just because as we develop this and we get more parent chaperones in, we want to kind of draw on their experiences and what kinds of opportunities that they have in mind for helping us raise all the money that we're going to need. In the packet that I sent over, Amy had developed a list of other opportunities on there that you can see how she in the past has kept track of all of their fundraising activities for that, and having that organization is a real benefit, and she's got the experience there, so she gets to take care of all the fundraising. So that's it. I mean, most of the information, some of the information on the board questions was obviously more just assurances. Are you going to do this? And we can assure you we're going to do those things. So, especially if we get approval, let the moms and dads know what are our parent nights. How are we going to involve all kids? I think the big ask, and it never hurts to ask, what can the board do for us? Ultimately, it'd be great if this is approved, if we could sponsor one student that really in need through some type of application process. That would be ideal. And the second part, why we're asking, it never hurts to ask, the fee for the chaperones to take this on, for every 10 kids you do get one free chaperone trip on there, but if, let's say we get 15 kids, well then the extra, they would give us $500 towards the next chaperone, so it's kind of a prorated chaperone price, maybe some funds to help offset the cost for a second chaperone on our trip. So obviously Amy and I would be involved in this, and so we'd maybe be asking to have the board or the district help offset some of those costs. So, any questions from you guys?
I do have a question. So
Sure.
you might have just answered it. My first question was just about the sponsors' cost and what you anticipated doing that. So it sounds almost like you've got a minimum number of 10.
Yeah.
Because if you have 10 come, then that covers your first chaperone.
At least one, yeah, at least one. So that would be a great, I mean, it'd be ideally great to have 20 kids out there. I think the program, the cost might be the determining factor for a lot of families on there, but a group of 10 to 15 I think would be really ideal. It would be a tight-knit group there and something very manageable to handle.
So I'm
throughout there.
assuming the minimum number is 10. That if you don't have 10 students that are interested,
Well,
do you have a minimum number?
no. Well, I guess that would be something that we would definitely have to look at. We haven't looked at a minimum number, but even if we're at 8, gosh, that'd be so close, and you'd hate to lose out on that experience for those 8 kids. So right now we don't have an answer to that, Stephanie. But
And so my next question is just, in Cody, the way a lot of things work is you almost need that summer. You
yeah.
need that summer to get ready for next year, but your intent is to go ahead and, if you receive the board's approval, that you'll go ahead and launch it with the anticipation that this is going to be your first year.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're going to go out and we have the posters and the flyers and getting the word out as fast as we can for kids. Just because, as you notice, that first deadline is coming up. And when Amy and I were going through this today, it was like, ooh, February, boy, that is not far off to have that first $400. And so, I guess barring no interest, then we'd push it back and go from there.
Other questions?
Sorry. We are planning to open the program to 7th and 8th graders because 8th graders will have already taken their U.S. history course, and the 7th graders will be anticipating their U.S. history course. So we thought either one of those grade levels would see a nice impact from the program on their academics the following year and in subsequent years.
Any other questions? Thank you. We have you down for an action item later in the
All right.
meeting.
Thanks, guys, for giving us the
Thanks,
time.
Mr.
Appreciate it.
Duncan. You bet. Mr. McCartan. While Jay's setting up, Mr. Trotter, you were added action, you're 2.9 on the agenda, by the way. Just thought I'd give you a little heads up. Thanks.
Well, thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to speak to all you guys. And I've been told to keep this short and sweet, so I have a little bit of a video I'd like to share with all of you. And it is an opportunity for me to kind of showcase some of the things we're doing at Sunset, but I want to reiterate to all of you that this is not solely a Sunset thing. This is something that we're working on jointly amongst all the elementary schools, and I would say that this carries over into the secondary schools as well. So one of the big things we're charged with every year is coming up with an idea on how we're going to propel our students forward and what we're going to do. And a lot of the things that we do year in and year out can always be tightened up, so to speak. So this is an opportunity that we're taking on as a administrative team to help shore up some of the things that we do. So you're going to see some familiar things in this video, I hope, and some new things, and I'll just let it roll, and then you guys can ask questions at the end. So here we go.
Resource training for staff members is also being revealed through this process. The Sunset teaching staff works diligently to ensure each student is screened and monitored using a universal screening measure such as distance for reading and math. This information, in conjunction with math data, is helpful in creating class data walls. Other data points such as unit math pre-assessment assist classroom teachers and interventionists in triangulating student performance. This information helps effectively decide student placement in small instructional groups. Student academic needs are targeted during intervention and enrichment, or IU groups. After sufficient instruction and assessment has been delivered, teachers review student data again. This occurs during the PPLC meetings at the grade level and bi-monthly with interventionist teachers, or as needed. Student groups are revisited and reformed as individual student needs change. Complex interventionists and special education teachers, the student success grade level team works closely with classroom teachers to target specific student needs. Students work in smaller group sizes with more intensive interventions for additional amounts of time. Building intervention team, or BIT team, closely monitors students who currently and historically receive digital support services. The team reviews student data to make sure student needs are being adequately met and ensure no one slips through the cracks. Ultimately, the Sunset MTSS process wants all students to be successful.
So I'm going to apologize for the volume or I didn't realize that was going to be like that. I hadn't had that problem before, so kind of tough to hear. But essentially what we're trying to do is make sure that all students, there's nobody that falls through the cracks, that we're pushing kids that are at the high end of the spectrum and helping those kids at the lower end of the spectrum achieve growth and making sure that they're getting where we need them to be successful in school. And we're streamlining the process and making it a system as opposed to just some hit and miss types of things. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm not going to lie to any of you. We have a lot of work to do. I think we've got some great things going and we're moving in the right direction, but it's a work in progress, and it's something that I think is necessary for our kids, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're moving forward with this. So, do you have any questions for me?
I appreciate the way you laid out the MTSS. That was helpful. It's helpful for me to understand it in that format, so thank you.
Yeah. That's it?
That's it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Foley, Mr. Johnston. Oh. And make sure Jeremiah was coming up too.
There we go. Well, good evening. Mr. Johnston and I are here this evening to talk a little bit about the AP scores. If I can figure out how to run the slideshow here, sorry about that. So these are the scores. Some of the scores that were in your board packet are from the 15-16 school year. We also have a comparison, though, that shows those scores from 2012 until present. That first table breaks down, and I know it's hard to see, but in your packets you can see it a little better. Cody's scores, Wyoming scores, and then global scores. And as you look across the different courses that we offer, right now we have AP Studio Art, AP Calculus, AP Bio, AP Environmental Science, AP Language and Composition, AP Physics, and AP Statistics. And when you look at those mean scores and you compare our scores to Wyoming or even global, in some cases our mean score is higher, some cases it's lower. And so that kind of varies a little bit as we go through. There are other reports that we can pull, but like some of the other data that we share, whether it's the PAWS data or the MAP data, if that sample size is too small, we run the risk of personally identifying a student. But if the board individually would like to drill down any further, we can pull some of those reports. But for a public meeting, we didn't want to expose a student that maybe didn't score as well as they had wanted. What's more probably important with this is looking at that 5-year summary. And so when you look across at that and you look at 2012, 2013, in 2013 we had 14 students that were taking the AP. In 2016 we had 78 students that took AP courses and tests. So we've seen an increase in the number of students. And what's also nice is that the percentage of students scoring a 3 or higher has gone from 28% to 60%. So we've seen an increase in that as well, which I think is a testament to the work that the high school teachers are doing. So it's nice to see an increase in that. I mean, there's always room to grow. Ideally, we'd love to see more students getting 4s and 5s, but and some are, but keep raising that bar up. So I figured you might have some questions, and that's why I asked Mr. Johnston to come up, and he may be able to field some that I don't have the answers to. So if there are any, Mr. Weber? Mm-hmm.
Does every AP student take the test?
Currently, yes.
Has that been the case in the past?
That hasn't always been the case.
That's amazing to me. I think when I first came on, or when I used to come to board meetings, I would hear that the AP students weren't taking the test.
Correct.
I can't imagine. It's like going to law school, but you don't take the bar. I don't understand why they would do that. I would think the teachers would require them to do that.
It is currently required. One of the things when you talk enrollments, though, there are a lot of kids that would like to take the class for the experience, the content, personal growth, but aren't necessarily interested in the stress, extra work of the exam itself. So we do hear that. We hear kids saying, if I didn't have to take tests, I'd probably take the class. But you have to weigh both sides, I guess. But we do currently require kids to take the test to take the class.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Do we currently have any merit scholars or semifinalists?
Not currently, no.
Not currently, okay. Do they sometimes get college credit for a 5 or more? Is that something that we do here?
Depends on the university that's accepting
UW
the transcript. It depends. It depends on the department. It depends on the school. I couldn't tell you what UW accepts and what they don't.
Yeah.
The kids really have to take their AP scores and pass them on to the university. Mm-hmm. Typically, what they will get, if they get a 3, 4, or 5, in some places 4 or 5, and in others they'll get exempted from an entry-level class.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Not credit. There are other places who actually issue them a college credit for that score. So it's all dependent upon the university and their own individual policies. So
Right.
we don't know that.
Stephanie, you'll remember, because we pay for the exams now, right?
Correct.
But we didn't always.
We didn't.
It's just been the last couple of years?
It has. It's just been the last couple of
So
years.
When we required it.
$80. $80 for a
It's-
test? So Scott, there's a financial thing. We wanted
Yeah.
to try to help the students out, so we've been paying for the exams the last couple of years too. I don't know where that falls in, but it could. I
Well, I think when the
some of these
decision was
kids are
made to
taking
test all
6 or
kids.
8.
Yeah.
The trend, I really like seeing the trend too. That's helpful. I appreciate that. I appreciate the efforts. Who would have thought in 2013 we'd see growth like this?
Well, and I would say another thing to keep in mind is part of that is scheduling. When we first offered AP courses, they weren't offered on the alternating block. So some of them were being offered maybe first semester, and then the kid would have from Christmas on until they took the test without the class. And so when we started really trying to offer more AP and really focus on the AP, we decided that they would be on the alternating block rotation, so the kid had it every other day all year, as to keep him in that class and not.
Take the class and then test at the end instead of having.
Yeah, instead of having the time off. So part of that jump, I think you would say, is part of that. But then the other part is just this focus on the academic component and getting teachers trained and delivering good content to kids, and it's been a good process.
So can you speak to more 4s and 5s? What's involved there? I know it's as you get higher and higher, you're squeezing like this. But how do you?
I would relate it similar to the conversation of our ACT scores and the state of Wyoming compared to national. Nationally, it's not required to take the ACT, where in Wyoming it is, and so every kid takes it. So every kid that takes an AP class takes that test. So our numbers probably won't compete necessarily with national from that standpoint, because nationally kind of the trend is, you can or you don't have to take the test to take the class. So, we require all kids to take it, and therefore we're going to get every kid's data, I guess I would say.
I don't mean I just want more of our
kids
getting 4s and 5s, regardless of how they compare to everybody. But I realize that's another challenge.
Well, and I would say longevity of programs. I think when teachers get these programs in and they spend a little more time with them year after year, they become better in terms of teaching that style of course, because an AP course is different than other courses in some respects. So I just think, giving them to teachers and letting them have that longevity and the chance to grow in that capacity, that's a great thing. And then just the culture, letting kids know that it's great to challenge yourself to do that, and don't be afraid of the test, and we'll help you get ready for it.
Well, it's a testament to our teachers too. I mean, they take this on. It's not like to say, okay, here's an extra $4,000 this year because now you're going to do an AP and you got all these high-strung kids and these extra, courses and rewriting all the curriculum. So
and the training
we offered
that they go through.
all these new classes, and we did because these teachers are back here going, yeah, I want to do it. That's really cool. I think that's neat.
It's the academic. I mean, it's really the push for advanced academics at Cody High School, and the teachers that are taking it on. It's a lot of extra work, and it's a lot of extra time, but they're doing it for the kids, and I think that's what we need to keep at the front of our conversations.
Well, we appreciate it. Please pass that on. Any other questions?
Just one of the things is so exciting about that percentage is you look at that number of students that are taking that class. And I know that in my house, the AP courses have been a blessing and have benefited my children. But one of the things that as a mom that I know is that you've got a number of students that are taking 3, 4, 5 AP courses. And when it comes down to those tests, and they may have an AP class on one, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those tests are a nationally standard test. And so the kind of stress and kind of pressure that is on those students, would we love to have all of our students get 4 and 5? But a lot of those students at the end of the semester, their senior year, they have to pick and choose, what to really focus on. And they do that, and I think that percentage just speaks to the quality of our courses overall over the year. And there's a lot of congratulations to go out there to students and to teachers. Thank you.
And getting a 3, I mean, they had the whole semester. They had the benefit of all that's going to benefit them in college going on, regardless of what the score is. So,
correct.
Once again, thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Foley, you can
Yes.
figure out how to run that thing, I think you're still up.
Well,
No-
you
no
know, I've got
pressure.
an up
you know.
arrow and a
I don't-
down arrow,
I was
so
getting
we'll see.
a little shell shocked there for a minute, but,
Evidently, I chose the wrong. It's the down arrow.
oh, look
So,
at that. Good job.
After last month's presentation about the comprehensive wellness analysis, I believe I was asked to do somewhat monthly or every other month kind of updates about the process with that. And so item 2.6 is just a brief update of the work that Mrs. Ballard has begun. She attended our district wellness team meeting, which is a cross-section of teachers and community members, just so she could introduce herself and talk a little bit about the process and what the intent was. Following that, on October 5th, she and I met, and if you look at that social ecology chart at the bottom, we went through bullet by bullet to identify people that she may want to interview within the district that could give her some insights with that. So it might be a middle school guidance counselor. It could be the assistant principal at the middle school and high school. It could be the school resource officer. So we just went through each of those bullets, and then her intent is to go ahead and start with those interviews. And essentially what she's going to do is just keep interviewing one-on-one with each of these people until she starts to get down where she starts to hear kind of that common theme, with the intent of seeing if there are holes anywhere, something that's not being met or not being fulfilled. So, and I'd be happy to take any questions from the board back to her as well. So if there's questions you'd like me to relay in that direction, I'd be happy. You can email them. You can ask me right now. Either is fine with me.
Okay. No, thank you. We appreciate it.
All right.
I like I think monthly feedback is such a short time frame. It might be good. Maybe bring Diane every other month, or as you. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Garden hire.
Here we go. I'll be pretty brief and run through this in a hurry. If you got questions, just interrupt me. But this slide it's some highlights of some things that are going on, and it's in the board packet, so we won't read every one of these. At Wapiti, we continue to work on the water quality issue, and the initial round of hardware replacement didn't solve all the problems, so we're going deeper, and that explains some of the activity that's going on there. We are waiting on results of all the lower level water tests, so don't have a lot to talk about tonight with regard to where we stand, but it's in the works.
What's our goal for point in time for saying it's safe to drink the water at public school in Park 6?
That's a hard question to answer.
No pressure, but
Yeah.
is there a light at the end of the tunnel, or is it? I mean, I appreciate the efforts. I don't need to minimize where we are, but
I understand.
I'm just kind of curious.
The action item levels that the EPA is working off of, it's a little unclear as to whether the EPA sees that as dangerous or just a level that we need to start taking action. So, with regard to the EPA, their next round of tests are scheduled in January. It's our intent to have all the copper and lead levels down below action item levels way before that. So once we get the copper and lead levels down below the action item level, then students we'll stop using bottled water and turn people loose toward drinking out of the water fountains and faucets.
Good answer. Mr. Schulte?
Well, just for clarification, Mr. Fulkerson, you mentioned Park 6, all the schools in Park 6. So, not to minimize the issue, but it is in one location and one is it just in the basement of the school?
On the upper level,
issues?
There was one sink that we still had issues with. After that came back, then we decided to test every outlet in the building just to make sure we didn't have a problem elsewhere.
So I don't want to minimize the location of one spot, but it's not all schools.
No, I shouldn't, I'm asking this question to make sure the public knows how serious we take this. We've taken it very seriously right from the get-go. We're throwing a lot of assets at it, and that's why I asked the question about the time frame. So I appreciate your efforts, and you had a good answer to that question. Thank you, Mr. Gardenhire.
Thank you. Anything else on water quality? All right, moving on. Security is one thing we really haven't talked much about. The state has $123,000 allocated for capital investment in our security programs, and some of the items they have earmarked don't make a lot of sense. I've gone through with each of the principals the items that the state has budgeted, and after reviewing that list, we've trimmed what we believe we need to be about $50,000. That means we can turn back $75,000 toward the state, and when we hand that back, request additional funding for some of the bullet point items down below there. There's some things we really need to fix. One of those is the PA system in the high school. Doesn't function in the gym or the SAC. Another one is the fire alarm annunciation. We've got separate systems, so if a fire alarm annunciates in the high school, it's not heard in the gym or the SAC. So there's a list of things we're interested in trying to expand with regard to our security and safety. Any questions on where we're going with that?
I do have one. So these are the priorities it says that you've initiated with SFD. So with the conversations being initiated, have you had any inkling as to if the funds were redeployed, if they are inclined to look at this list, consider this list? What is your take on where they are with that?
The initial conversation went pretty well, and we have Tanner Norton from the SFD is going to be here on the 25th. We're going to take him out to the schools. We're going to show him what we're talking about, and after that meeting, I ought to have a better answer to your question with regard to are they receptive to funding some of these things. I'm sorry, October 25th.
So I have a general question, which is, so when you're talking about SFD capital budget for district projects, you're talking about monies that are outside of the major maintenance funds?
Yes.
Okay. And so when it comes to, so on our 3-year plan, we had a CMS remodel of the office for the middle school and for East Side for schedule for next year. So are we hoping that they're going to deploy some of these funds back that will free up some of this money?
Honestly, I don't think there's enough money for them to devote to that, but until we ask, I don't know what they're going to say.
Certainly. And so, I mean, it is nice that it was kind of on our agenda
Right.
already for those two. So, thank you.
Anything else?
Board meeting, will you give us an update on this part of
Sure.
what they came back with their priorities?
Sure.
If you got the impression that they were going to be, okay.
On the weight room, there was detail in the board packet with regard to how we finish up with the contract, and if you've got any questions on that detail, I can answer those, but didn't really want to rehash this slide unless we need to.
No, we've been back to look at it. It turned out really nice.
Okay.
Really pleased with how it turned out.
It is being fully utilized. You can tell from the picture there. I mean, there's 3 kids at every station that morning. So
Are they bouncing around upstairs now?
they've got the mats rolled out. I haven't witnessed bouncing, but they're prepared to do it.
It's your impression that it's being utilized upstairs also?
It appears so, yes.
Okay. Clarify your comments, Mr. Gardner. Yes, please.
Before we leave that slide, what do you mean by point architects recommend foregoing a portion of the penalty? What can you explain that?
The project came in 17 days late, and in the contract, there was a provision that we could charge them $250 a day for each day that it came in late. and there was really 3 significant delays in that project. One of those was related to the forest fires in the area, and they pulled crews off that project, and that's what Tundra is requesting, that we don't penalize them for.
Was it Acker Electric?
Yes.
So Acker Electric had 5 guys, and they were all working, and they all got pages to go fight the fires. So it's hard to, some of that's a little bit outside the control of the contract.
Yeah, I just think we were $129,000 over on that project. We paid way too much for that project. I would recommend you don't do that.
Okay.
Any other?
And last slide is on Valley. This drawing is kind of a concept drawing. We looked at where to put this addition, either on that, well, there's about 3 spots you could put it. It looks like it's going to fit better right on the back and tie into the roof line and be less intrusive. So that's currently the direction this project is going.
West towards the river?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're a little late in that the contract or the architect didn't get a contract for, I don't know, about 30 days later than was anticipated. So where we were wanting to visit with the Forest Service in September, that's more like November now, and that's where we're headed. As the design changes and evolves, we can keep you guys abreast of what that looks like.
I went out there and looked at Valley School, and the kids were out there. It looked like, at least the day I was there, they were doing a lot of their activities down where that addition's going on. And at one point, that's when I think we were talking about taking and kicking it off as you look at your diagram to the right there, kind of where the slope comes down. I think there's a little bit of playground equipment in there. Has this been discussed with the folks out at Valley to see if this is really going to impact what they actually really use for a way of space?
Yeah, if you look at the diagram, the dotted lines are topo lines. So this is going on that slope where less play activity is going to take place. There's a merry-go-round right down off the corner of that would need to be moved, but other than that, no play equipment would be impacted by that positioning.
I was concerned about the initial concept drawing when it did go off to the right of how much playground equipment we were going to have to lose and possibly move. I am excited to see the possibility of a restroom. That was one thing that people were concerned about. A possible egress would be another, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. But it's exciting to see it moving along.
One other thing we ought to mention is before we talk to the Forest Service, we need to continue the discussion about the cabin and what we want to do with that so we can lay that out for the Forest Service sometime in November. Yeah. Anything else on Valley? Thank you.
Mr. Sarvey.
All right, good evening. By way of budget update, you can see our current budget that there before you. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner there that we have about 83% remaining of our budget. One of the big numbers impacting that is a little bit lower than what it usually is at this time of year. The major impact is up under the employee benefits there, under the second line. We have over $1 million in there of our claims run out and our deficit that we had with WisBait for last year. And those two combined come up to over $1 million, which is a one-time one-time hit to our budget. So as you can see, our benefits there is about 75% remaining, which is less than the 87% of salaries. And that's the main thing driving that, and I have a slide to talk about that a little bit later in there. But for 3 months in, we're right about where we should be budget-wise. There are a couple things that I know we will go over budget that I'll go over. One is going to be employee benefits as far as the health insurance, and the other is going to be our workers' compensation that I will have a slide. As you can see on here to the far left there is where we're at, so you can see that we are lower than years past with our percentage remaining of the budget. And there again, the employee benefits is the major thing there. There again, you can see by object how we've spent. About 82% is salaries and benefits in there. On our health and wellness benefits, as you can see, our total expenditures are up over $3,000 from last year. There again, you can see we've had 62 annual memberships to the recreation center and to other health-related facilities, which is an increase of about 22 from where we were last year. So I think it is still growing. People are still coming in today asking about it. So that's been a great benefit. On our food service, as you can see there, we used about $21,000 of our subsidy of our $125,000 that we've set aside. September was the month where our expenses caught up with our income. We've had some expenses out there for the direct food costs and different things that came in, so we are matching that closer now to our revenues. So as you can see, we held our cash the same, and we subsidized the loss of $21,000 there. Major maintenance, you can see our current month spending there in September is about $245,000. On our projects, we're just under $600,000 year to date, and we still have budget of about $638,000 and a cash balance of $1.3 million. On our health insurance run-out claims, on here, you can see that we're at 449,000 total claims as of the end of September. We had budgeted for that right about 600,000. We had one come in, the first one in October was about $36,000. And so we are getting closer to $500,000 there on those run-out claims. The prior year deficit there of $614,000, we have received a letter from Wisbate on that, to where that is the number that we owe for the prior year claims. I'm asking for a little bit more backup from them so that I can verify that number before we make payment for that. We have about 60 days to make payment on that. From the date of the letter, which was a couple weeks ago. So, yeah. And so I'm going to, I said, get some more information on that just to make sure that number's accurate. And that. So as you can see, our budget there, $994, we're about $68,000 over right now, over our budget for these run-out claims and our deficit. So they are running higher than what we anticipated in April and May when we put the budget together.
But it's almost over, right? How long is this?
Well, it should be about over. Some of the weeks, as you can see, yeah. I think they are about through. We have a year on this, and so there could be some claims still come through, but we expected by the end of September for them to be just about ran out. So, So I wouldn't anticipate too much more.
Tom, can I stop you for just a minute?
Sure.
So on this over, you have 68,498.45. But that is not including, if I followed you correctly, the 65,000 that came in October, correct?
There was about 30-some thousand that came in October that is not on there yet. So it's going to be closer to 100.
100,000.
Closer to 100 right now. On our workers' compensation, as you can see there on the second line, our rates for fiscal year 2016 was 2.35. And we had several claims that year, and our rate that we found out in about July 1st is 4.9 for this year, which is over double what we had paid in those claims. And as such, you could see that we had about $136,000 in expenditures for premiums last year. That is going to increase to about $283,000 if the wages stay consistent with last year. So we are going to go over our budget there about $147,000. I broke it out down below so you could see that the transportation special education wages are reimbursable from the state, so that will not come through our general fund expenditures that are non-reimbursable.
Whatever 90 is going to be, so 60 or so is what will hit our budget.
So about 60,000 will hit the non-reimbursable budget. So if we have to amend the budget for the 147,000 on there, we will be reimbursed for the almost 90,000 for transportation and special education next year.
Doesn't that reset annually?
It does.
So if we have a flat year, it could possibly go
It'll come back down next year if we.
But just a question, but as far as the 90,000 though, but that will hit our budget this year because it's reimbursed.
It will hit our budget. So we would have to amend the budget at some point if we can't find budget for it. Yeah.
And it was the increase in the special education, Stephanie led a charge with the WSBA, and we got sped paras covered with workers' comp. Previously they weren't.
The teachers.
So we're going over budget and the teachers. So that's a good thing. I mean, before they were not covered by workers' comp. So I think
Yeah.
we're going over budget. That's a good deal. They're protected.
Yeah.
That's some of our claims.
I was going to say that's
part of the reason it's going.
that's part of the increase.
Are going to 4.9. Steph, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just do my job.
Okay, one last item I'll share with you is we know last year about February timeframe we received $100,000 from the Ruth Anderson Trust for activity meals. As you can see, the meals purchased there to date as of the end of September is $39,744. And so we have at the end of September just over $60,000 remaining. And as you can see, February, March, those are high months with all of the winter activities. And so I would assume that the 60,000 might go through the rest of the fiscal year is about what we're looking at the rate that it is going now. And I will update you each month on this as well, and we can see where we currently stand. So with that, I'd take any questions.
Mr. Crocker.
Hello. So this weekend sent an email in response to people asking me about CEA's endorsement, and without thinking, I just kind of sent out an email, not to the whole district, but to many of the schools.
As co-chair of the CEA.
Well, No, this is just me making a poor choice. This really wasn't a CEA decision. This was a Sean Trotter decision. And so I sent it out kind of as a response to many people asking me about it, and without even really thinking about being the political part of using a district email for something like that. I just sent it to get the word out without even really realizing. It wasn't until Monday I got an email from Angie kind of saying, can't do that. And I said, well, I messed that up. And so I sent out an email to those same schools then on Monday saying, hey, I shouldn't have sent that email, and then emailed you guys and all 10 candidates today kind of saying the same thing, saying this was my mess up, sending that on the district email. That wasn't where that should have been sent.
Just so the public and the board know, I contacted all of the trustee candidates to apologize as a board member for this email that went out. And in addition, there was some discussion if maybe this action violated some state or local election laws, and I spoke to the county clerk whose election office is under them, and it didn't. There's a federal act, the Hatch Act. It didn't violate that, and it didn't violate any state statutes. So just to let the public know that you know, as chair of the trustees, that we're sorry this went out. We certainly had the board. There's 3 incumbents that are trustees now, certainly had nothing to do with this. I think Mr. Trotter spoke eloquently when he said he acted on his own. It was not approved, and our board had nothing to do with authorizing the release of that email. Any questions for Mr. Trotter?
The CEA board did not authorize it either. That's where I say it wasn't a CEA decision. That was me just reacting to being asked and thinking we hadn't really released any information yet on that. That was just me reacting and doing it on my own.
Mr. Trotter, how many of the, well, let me just start broader. How many people are actually a member of the CEA?
I know percentage-wise,
Percentage is fine.
Close, 55% of the staff.
55% of the staff?
Yeah.
Okay. But you said you sent that out larger than 55%. It went broader than that? Okay.
Yep.
Now, I got your email afterwards. I do appreciate that. But did you say that went out to the people that you sent the original email to as well, or just the board and whatnot?
No, yesterday I sent to everybody who received the original email.
Okay.
Sent that same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Getting complaints that this email went to individuals and parents. What is your forward list? There were no parents on your forward list?
No.
I wonder how they got that.
Only if they're employed in the district. If they work at a school.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Trotter. The next item is the consent agenda 3.0.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.8 with just a small amendment to 3.1 on the minutes, just to include that Trustee Snelson was present at the September 20th board meeting.
Is there a second? Second. So there's a motion and second to approve the consent agenda with the amendment to the minutes. Is there discussion?
On the CHS late fee, the weight room late fee penalty, it was 17 days, is that correct?
17 total.
And so we're knocking off the 5 for what we talked about earlier, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, completely out of control. And there were other, they lost 5 or 6 days because of a steel supplier wasn't late. But it's his supplier. He owns up to it. He's willing to take that. So I think it's fair. Other discussion? I have a clarification for Mr. Schulte. Item 3.4, isolation mileage reimbursement request. These are just for one school year at a time?
I believe we act on those every year independently. So, and just to remind the board, those are from a student's home to the nearest bus stop. So some parents will choose to drive their kids all the way into town, if that's what they want to do. But the reimbursement is calculated from the home to the bus stop. So when you get to some of these ranches that are kind of out there, it doesn't cover all their mileage to and from the school.
Thank you for that clarification. I wasn't aware of that. Other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. So the next item is public input on agenda and non-agenda items. I'm going to ask Mr. Strumke to time this. Somehow my timing abilities have been called into question in the past, so I'm going to ask Mr. Strumke to do that. It's a true story. Mr. Talon.
Sir. Sir, very briefly, I would just like to address the issue that Mr. Trotter just addressed. I spent 24 years of my adult life as a federal civil servant, subject to the Hatch Act, which prohibited political activity utilizing any form of government resources or the implication of government involvement in any political campaign activity. The only penalty for violation of the Hatch Act is removal from office. There is no lesser penalty. Now, I understand, Mr. Fulkerson, you made some inquiries and someone told you the Hatch Act was not violated. I don't think the Hatch Act applies here in any case. But nonetheless, the example applies. Appearances and perceptions are reality. Sending an email as broadly as Mr. Trotter did to employees of the district from his own district email account gives the appearance of school district endorsement of those positions. And I have to say, I'm not disturbed by the CEA endorsements. I'm really not disturbed by that at all. But perceptions are reality. It creates the perception in the mind of recipients, and the recipients of every person who receives that email forwarded from any original recipient. And in that sense, the damage is done. Those communications cannot be withdrawn. They cannot be undone. Apologies do not negate that impact. And so, regardless of the statutes and regardless of your interpretation of board policy, I have to say I think that behavior was highly inappropriate, and I want that to be noted. Okay? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Talon.
Good evening. I'd like to share a parable. So the town gossip is starting to feel guilty about being the town gossip, and she goes to the wise man of the village. And she says, "Can I be absolved of this?" And he says, "Yes. I'd like you to go home and get a feather pillow and go up on top of that hill on the next windy day. Okay? And get a scissors, cut open one side of the pillow, and then flop it into the wind and let all the feathers fly out." Okay, she does that. She goes back to the wise man and she says, "Am I absolved now?" And he says, "No, you have to go collect the feathers." And she says, "I can't." He says, "Exactly. Thank you."
Ink Whitelock. No? Okay, thank you. Terry Bray.
Hi. Most of you, and I apologize, Mr. Schulte, I sent an email to the rest of the board yesterday, and it did not make it to you, and that was not purposeful. It was the list that I had, and I sent it to, so I apologize. You perhaps have heard I am a homeschool mom, and so one of the things that I want to do is keep the line of communication open between the school board and the folks that are non-public students right now. Those may be virtual students, homeschool students, even private school students, and I'm not aware of all of those folks, and I don't know them, but I know that our communication with the board needs to be good and needs to be clear. And so one of the things that I kind of try to do is kind of keep an eye on and know what's going on in the school board and know what's going on in the school system. And with your work session, of September 6th, I requested that information just because you were discussing some of those things. And part of, I think, where I'm a little confused and would like some clarification is kind of the intent of some of that. I can read the paperwork and the presentation that you were given, but how the board wants to go forward, and I know that y'all are going to maybe discuss and vote on this later, so it's kind of hard to comment before you get to that discussion where y'all are having an action item. But regarding minimum and maximum classes at both the middle school and the high school level, and then also the activities fees that may be imposed that was discussed. I know that on the paperwork that I received that I requested from the state, from the office, the Secretary's office, it said it discussed the virtual school, the private school, the home school, and then neighboring schools. I don't know exactly what the neighboring schools mean, but what I saw in there was the discussion of adding fees for activities, and my question with the statute that I sent in the email was not to say, hey, y'all don't know what you're talking about, but was to say, hey, have you looked at this statute? Because it is something that those funds need to go be universal, and so didn't want those non-public students being, penalized in some way. And then the other one is in how the ADM is reported, the actual versus the rounding. I had talked with the WDE and talked with them about the options and that is an option here. That basically the district makes that decision. And I think when the district does make that decision and the board makes that decision, just take all those things in the factors. Like if you have a homeschool student, my kids are little, so they're not participating in this right now. But if they say wanting to take a class, and I know students that take band or GATE or some of those things that take a class, that perhaps the district, if they don't reach the 25% mark, then they don't get paid those funds from the WE, which includes the federal and the state funds. And so I don't know how to come to, the best method. I'm sorry. But just that we need to discuss that actual versus rounding.
You bet.
Thanks.
And this will come up if you stick around. We're definitely going to address this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Amy Law.
Thanks a lot for all the time and effort you guys put into being on the school board. We appreciate it. So I'm also a home educator, and I want to say that my children do participate in the schools. My son does band and GATE at the middle school, first year as sixth grader. And so I want to say that he's blessed by that. And I want to say thank you. You don't always get to hear that. You get to hear the critical part. So, and I love that your vision says that all students will achieve excellence. And your mission statement says all students will learn at higher levels. And so my son doesn't fit in the typical academic environment. And so I pulled him in third grade because I was going to lose him. And so, but I just wanted to express that it's really important to us as a family and to grow him as a young man. And my other younger son is also hopefully participating in GATE, which would just be 1 day a week. He's in second grade. And so, I guess I wanted to make sure that the fees were fair. So I also sent an email too, and sorry, Mr. Schulte, I didn't send it to you either. But just to remind you that the fees need to be equal to the public student as well as to the non-public student. And also to be thankful to you that it's really, that your mission statement is to build up young people that are good citizens and mature leaders, and being able to offer those classes to those that don't fit the typical standard everyday academic situation. It's important to us that we can continue to participate. And I understand that you have a shrinking budget, but I hope that you don't try to increase your budget through cutting out the blessings that you give to us that aren't part of the mainstream school system. And in addition to activities with sports, I know they both love and long to play middle school and high school sports. And so I hope that continues, that you open the door for students that aren't public school students. So, thank you.
Jeremy Becker.
Thank you. I want to address the same issue. And I've got 3 points that I want to address real quick. Number one, I believe this is probably a poor business decision. Okay, and so I'd like for you guys to consider that. As you probably already know, homeschool students are about 3%, probably a little bit less than 3% nationally of the students, which equates down, based on my research, to about 66 kids or so in Park County. Okay, and 0.03% of the students in Park County are taking academic classes currently that are in that homeschool demographic, if you will. And so, even if we double that, if your policy doubles that, now we're at 0.06. Woohoo! Okay, we're really ripping here. Okay, and let's assume that you can get them to a 50% revenue because of increasing incentives to get them to take more classes. Your revenue is maybe $60,000 that you're going to get off of that, plus whatever fees you add onto it. Yet you risk alienating the entire demographic of alternative education people in the community. It's not worth it. It's a bad business decision. The students who would actually help your academic numbers and help the good citizenship are found in that homeschool community. Okay, I know because I have 6 of them. Okay, and so yes, I'm a little biased there, but I used to teach in public education, so did my wife. So we know that game. Second thing that I would encourage you to think about is the untested legality of whether this is going to go against the statute that was mentioned earlier. That if that ends up getting tested, it opens the district up to potential discrimination allegations. If one of those shows up, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars is that going to cost you? That's not worth, again, not a good business decision. Third, and on the second one, the legislature has already shown their bias. That's why the statute says what it says. Third, faulty assumptions. The rumor mill is that what you're trying to do is bring up another $500,000 that you feel like the district is due because of these students that are not being enrolled. Okay, based upon your numbers from the PowerPoint, I can see 27 data points that are there. And assuming there's no overlap, which likely there is overlap in those data points, people who are taking academic classes and doing activities, okay, but based on that assumption, that's still minuscule numbers. So,
thank you for your comments.
All right.
I don't want to be rude, but I'm really trying to be equitable. So Mr. Wilkerson.
Good evening. I'd just like to go back to the email issue very quickly. First, I'd like to thank the board and Chairman Fulkerson for contacting and apologizing to all the people running for school board and making it clear that the board wasn't behind those emails. One thing I will point out, and I apologize for not being better prepared, but this was a last-minute decision to speak after I heard the other conversations. The Chairman Fulkerson made it very clear, made a point to point out that no state or federal laws were violated by this. I would like to hear the board discuss right now whether or not any policies, school policies, were violated by this. I know members of the board have knocked around that issue. I would like it discussed right now. I will point out the same policy that allows me to speak before the board states specifically that I can ask questions of the board and you are required to answer them immediately. I would like you to do that. You have opened the door. You've discussed whether state or federal laws were violated. There's no reason not to discuss whether or not any policies were violated by this. I'd like the same people that heard the previous discussion to hear that. Thank you.
Actually, if I can just real quick, and I'm going to cut in here. Mr. Wilkerson, that's one of the reasons actually that I added or moved to have 4.2 added, because I do want to discuss it as well. So if you can wait, I know you said right now, can it wait maybe 2 minutes to let other people get through their comments? Or
Hopefully not.
Oh, you were the last?
Hopefully not too many people leave.
Okay, well, if you're the last, it doesn't really matter. I guess right now is right now. So there you go.
So Trustee Strumke requested that we add action item 4.2. I didn't write campaigning by staff on, what was the whole?
Discussion of campaigning by staff on school grounds or with school resources is how I termed it. But I think I had it. The intent was broad enough to cover what Mr. Wilkerson is looking at.
So I'll ask you to lead the discussion, or what your thoughts are when adding that to the agenda.
Certainly. So I received a bunch of emails, of course, on this topic. I think everybody did. We've seen it go back and forth. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is I am looking actually in front of me here of school board policy GBI:PM. And I'm not going to really bore everybody with reading it all in its entirety. But I think it is fair to say that this does kind of address this issue. And it really does say that we're not to use school resources or grounds to be doing any campaigning, at least the way I look at it in its entirety. I am concerned. I do understand that Mr. Trotter was here today. He did apologize. He apologized in an email form as well. But I think Mr. Talon kind of bring up the point as well, and we hear it at least in the law that you can't unring the bell. You know, we oftentimes will give limiting instructions in a court to say, hey, just ignore what you just heard. Well, that never works, right? Because I tell the board here, don't think about elephants and what just popped in your mind, elephants. Okay, so it's a hard place to be, and how to resolve that issue. I've kind of given some thought. I don't know if I have a good answer. Besides the email, though, I was made aware, and maybe somebody can talk to it, that I believe it was East Side, I was being told, we have... Oh, okay, it's okay, I can wait. All right. I've been told that we have at least maybe a substitute teacher. Some have said maybe she's a permanent substitute teacher. Handing out flyers and other campaign material for certain school board trustee candidates. And I guess I'm a little bit flabbergasted if this is what we're doing, because again, it seems to be directly in contradiction with the policy and just good practice. I mean, forget the policy for a second, just good practice. So what I would challenge not only the superintendent to look into, but the school administration at each school level to see what's going on in your school and put a stop to it. This is me speaking. I'm one person on the board, but we can't be doing this. Otherwise, the only other answer is to have them hand out everybody's literature. And I'm guessing whoever's doing it out there doesn't want to do that. So, this has to stop. Me as one board member, I think it's wrong. I think it's in violation of the policy, and that's probably all I'm going to say on the matter.
So I'll try to briefly respond. There were two points that were brought up. Were there any policies violated by Mr. Trotter's actions? And it appears there was at least one policy violated. Mr. Wilkerson, I don't see. Oh, there you are. It appears there was. To answer that question. The second point you brought up, it was pretty nebulous. You brought it up, so I just want the specifics. You were told there was possibly what was the individual's name and who told you? And
I'm happy to go down the name, but we're in a public board session right now, and that might become a personnel issue. So the people that have heard about it probably know the name, and I'm happy to sit down with the superintendent and give that specific data that's been given to me, but I am uncomfortable going down a personnel route right here in public.
Okay, the reason I asked is I received an email that somebody had questioned a substitute of the district. And so I called the person and asked them. And they flatly deny any involvement. So it's pretty hard. Okay, so you can talk to Ray and we can decide if this person did or didn't do what they were accused of. Is there any further discussion on item 4.2?
I would just comment that my only concern when you have people using public emails for campaign purposes, and I think CEA probably is aware of this, but if one entity does it, then you have to open it to other entities. And so I think we have to use extreme caution when we're addressing political issues on public's emails and using the resources, because my concern would be that other entities who want to endorse candidates could then ask to have the same access, and that could cause more issues. So that's my only comment.
I think that's a good point, and I think that was one of the reasons that we asked Mr. Trotter to address the board and address the public to let them know that, you know, it is not acceptable behavior. I mean, I don't. Hopefully, everyone in the room realizes that.
So since we've been asked to speak individually, all of us, we've been asked to speak to this, is that I was not knowledgeable about the email that was sent out. As soon as I was knowledgeable, I contacted Mr. Trotter, and I hope that it wasn't so. I was disappointed. I believe it's a violation of the policy, and I support the policy.
Any further discussion?
Just like to know, or like to state that I did not learn about this email till yesterday. I don't want to.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, action item 5.1, employment recommendations.
Make a motion that we approve action item 5.1.100 through 5.1.502.
There's a motion in this section to approve the employment recommendations as presented. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Action item 5.2, vouchers for payment.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the vouchers for payment. I'd like to make a motion that we approve such.
There's a motion and a second to approve the vouchers for payment as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval to purchase 2 buses.
Motion that we approve the purchase of 2 2018 Bluebird All-American buses in the dollar amount of, I think the total is, well, $186,940 for the activity bus and $144,290 for the route bus.
So there's a motion and a second to approve the 2 Bluebird buses. I have a question. There's seat belts on one of the buses, it looks like, but not the other one.
Yes, that's correct. The activity bus was ordered with seat belts, which is probably a little more comfortable seat, but we're not suggesting using seat belts on route buses. There's not much evidence to show that makes much difference. But on activity buses driving across the state, that makes more sense.
And they'll both be set up for our camera systems?
They'll both, I think there are 5 cameras each on them.
The buses are reimbursed. The 5-year lease has a reimbursement. You want to add to that?
Well, actually, yes, and that'll be reimbursed through the. We'll have to go out and do a lease agreement before next June, before it comes time to pay those. So we'll come back to the board in the spring of the year, ask to go out on bid to get a lease agreement, and the lease payment as well as the principal is reimbursed by the state today.
I have a couple of questions. First off, we're talking lease, we're talking purchase. What are we really talking here?
We're talking about ordering the buses. We would order the buses, which would be the same as purchase. We would have to obtain a lease agreement in the spring of the year to pay off the buses and then get reimbursed from the state over 5 years.
Okay,
It's
so-
how we've done it for...
Right. So for my clarification then, at the end of 5 years, is it like a lease where we turn them back in?
No,
They're not ours, or are
um,
we purchasing them at the end of 5 years? They're
Actually,
still mine.
at the end of when the buses are no longer, like the buses we're trading in, the district purchased them, but we trade them in, and the trade-in offsets the value of the new buses. So to answer your question, the state basically owns those buses. They buy them and we own them.
It's a lease, but we own it at the end.
Okay.
So it is like a
And
combination.
And so it's just the state's preference that we purchase them over the period of years to reduce their capital outlay, is their request.
No, go ahead.
It's a 5-year lease agreement, but the part that's different, if we decide to trade in buses or sell buses, the money goes back to the state either way.
Okay. The other question I would have is, and you probably don't have the answer to this, but if you do, awesome. So when I was in Boston, they were talking about the propane running buses being cleaner, cheaper, not only to run over miles, but to maintain as well. Have we looked at any of those options in our district?
I would say we haven't taken a serious look at it, not like Pinedale and a couple other places. I think the biggest trouble they run into, and I don't know this, Billy, but I think the trouble they run into is refueling when they're out on the road.
Right, and I don't want to turn this into a discussion about that. I just didn't know if we had
But
looked
we
at it.
could certainly look at that in next year.
Yeah, perhaps it might be something to give a good look
Yep.
at. Thank you.
So just one more clarification. I think that we make the purchase tonight, and then we go ahead and in the lease part, that's when we determine who has the best interest rates, and so it'll come back to us.
Right, and that'd probably be March or April.
So we have, there's a motion on the floor to approve the purchase of 2 buses. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So action item 5.4.
Mr. Chair, I move to table action item 5.4 at this time for at least 2 months.
So there's a motion and a second to table action item 5.4. So I was going to say, action item 5.4, set guidelines and fees for non-Park 6 students in Park 6 courses and activities. Mr. Schulte, one of the questions was brought up tonight, and we've spent a lot of time on it the last 2 days, was how we choose to receive funding, the one class, 1/7 or 1/6 versus the 25%, 50. Does everybody? Okay. And Mr. Schulte, as I understand it, the vast majority of the districts have chosen. Well, why don't you talk about the two? You might be a little more eloquent than I described it. Maybe.
Well, we do have 2 options. We can do the rounding method where if a student's in, and we talked about this at the board work session in September, if a student's in class more than 25% of the day, that counts as 50% ADM. If they're in school more than 50% of the day, it counts as a full ADM. As a district, we use the rounding method. That's what most districts use. There are situations, for instance, where students might be in school, say 6 out of 7 periods a day, maybe 1 period a day. They leave for whatever reasons. It might be work, it might be religious, it might be whatever. But in those situations, school districts typically use a rounding method where you count half ADM, full ADM. And that's what we try to do. We have an option of looking at both models, but if you look at the numbers, there's no way that counting the per class is going to give us more of an ADM bump than just rounding. And so that's what we use. We use the ADM round.
So statewide, the business managers have looked at it. I tried to come up with specific numbers for us tonight, but we couldn't put it together. But statewide, historically, the business managers have determined that the rounding up method is more advantageous for the districts. The districts earn more money that way. So I hope that clarifies for the board, because I learned a lot today following up on that. So I appreciate your interest.
So I just would like to have a clarification. So we have a motion to table this. One of the difficulties is that there's already been a certain amount of misinformation or misunderstanding that's in the community, some that was represented tonight. And so if we go ahead and we table this for 2 months, then basically the conversation tonight stops. And I would much prefer that we at least move this conversation down the road a little bit. Is that possible?
We're in discussion. We can discuss it.
Yeah, I don't think table it stops the discussion right now in this period. I think it just keeps us from voting tonight up or down on it.
Well, then I have to take this opportunity of discussion to go ahead and just address a few things. And so, number one, we have been presented with policy JG. I haven't had a good enough time to look at this, but I do want to speak to the activity fees, because we do have some people who have been good enough to come out tonight and listen to us. And so state statute dictates that any student that resides in our residence, that any activity that is Wyoming High School Association sanctioned, we have the right, or we have the obligation and the honor to serve them, and that's what we do at Park 6. When you look at the $20 activity fee that is listed, or the $10 activity listed at the CMS, that is the universal fee that every student is charged in the district. And so there's not a discrepancy there. We're not looking at charging one group a different price than the other. That's currently what our activity fee is for those activities.
That's a good point. There was some misinformation, I believe, in some of the emails, that there's some miscommunication that somehow tonight we were going to charge additional fees for students that were not in the district to participate in an activity that's the Wyoming High School Association certified. That's the high school level. And there's not. There's a fee there, but that's the same fee that all students pay. So that's pretty important. You want that? You have something else?
I have one thing on that, though, I think, just to speak to the miscommunication. I think the difference, and maybe it's not getting communicated accurately, is that the public school students are charged the $20 fee for participation for CHS, and the middle school is $10, which is the same for public school students. The difference is the homeschool and virtual school have to pay the $100 membership plus the $7 catastrophic fee. So the $100 membership to the Wyoming High School Activities Association agreement, their membership fee, that is a difference. And maybe someone could speak to how the district covers that for public school students.
That was what I was going to go into next. Would you like to? No, go ahead. So the WSHAA participation fee, that's not Park 6. That's a statewide obligation. And so I was happy enough to talk to a parent about that. But one of the things that we would like to do in the augmentation of this policy is that it's very clear for parents that go ahead and look at the policy and understand exactly what the fees are and who's charging them, because that is a Wyoming High School Athletics Association fee. And so for those students that are members, that are fully enrolled, we pay the Wyoming High School Association fee. And so it's like a group rate versus an individual rate is the best.
That's not the $100 middle school fee that's here. Is that what you're referencing? That's another fee that's not on. You're talking about what a virtual school would pay?
I wasn't looking at that.
Okay, you're speaking in general.
I'm just thinking that there is a Wyoming High School Athletic Association fee fee that homeschools, that non-enrolled students?
So on this chart, there's two, the upper left, there's two things we're actually looking at here that would be changes. The upper left with the homeschool course numbers. And this speaks to the percentages. So if a homeschool student takes one, the district basically is not reimbursed. But if they take two, it meets the 25%. We get 25% of the ADM. And right now there's no policy on it. They can take one, they can two, they can do whatever. And the board can choose to do or whatever. But that's one of the big points. And it is, people keep bringing it up that it is a tight funding year. I mean, we're looking at, last year was hard. Next year is going to be really hard. And so we're chasing nickels. We're chasing dimes. We really are. And we don't want to put it on anybody's back. But if it was to encourage a student to take two classes and we can pick up, $5,000 a year. Anyway, so that upper left one that says yes, minimum two, maximum, that would be new. And then this other one is the virtual school pays $100 activity. Now, Mr. Schulte, jump in if I get this wrong, but that's the other additional fee that we are that is proposed for the board to consider. So those are the only two boxes that are different.
The virtual school is going to have to pay, virtual school students have to pay $100?
Virtual school kids that in middle school that participate in an activity would pay $100 per activity.
Isn't that different than what the public school students that are enrolled in Park 6 are paying?
It is, but that's middle school is a non-WHSAA sanctioned activity. So we're not violating state statute. High school is.
Let me say something here.
Sure.
The virtual Connections Academy here in Cody is actually Bighorn 1.
Correct.
All right, this is where a lot of the misinformation occurred as far as the emails I received. People were confusing our policy with someone who is non-Park 6 coming in here, a student. Okay, and they're also confusing, a year ago, a couple came here, parents came here, and they wanted their daughter to be in GATE, but she was in Connections Academy, therefore a student of another district. Okay, I'm not talking about our homeschoolers in Park 6. And that leaked into this discussion when we said no, or we gave a price. The parents wouldn't pay it, the Connections Academy wouldn't pay it, and so the child didn't end up being here in GATE at all. So that leaked into this discussion. So we have to watch out because the homeschoolers were thinking, I think, some of them that they were being treated as if they were a non-Park 6 student. Okay, and I think the board.
Virtual school works with Bighorn County. Why it would not be part of Park 6.
That's a long story.
We can do it briefly. So the virtual academy in Cody is actually has to be sponsored by a school district. So that's Bighorn 1. So when they enroll in the virtual academy, $15,000 goes to Bighorn 1. Of that, $1,400 is slated for activities, however you do that. So Bighorn 1 gets the entire $15,000, and those students come to Park 6 and use our uniforms, blah, 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 whatever. And so this $100 is an attempt to have some equity between the virtual school and Park 6. So as far as fees, the homeschoolers are not, we're not changing anything. There's no additional fees. There's complete parity. I just kind of want to make sense. It's hard to pick that up. Again, the only thing with the homeschoolers that's on the chart today is this minimum maximum as far as course numbers.
So I don't remember, and I ran through a lot of this with my own kids. We paid the $100 to the Wyoming School Board or the Wyoming Activities Association. Excuse me. Yes, and then I believe we also paid the $20. I don't remember if we were required to pay the catastrophic insurance or not. That might have been something additional that we said no to, and I don't see it on the private school one. The other thing on this that's odd is I called the Activity Association because they wanted me to fill out the combination school agreement, which didn't make sense to me either because it wanted me to call myself a principal and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I said it didn't apply, and it's here for some of them, but it doesn't show for the neighboring schools. There's a lot on this that I think definitely has to be looked at. And I understand we're pinching pennies, but use the term complete parity. I think we don't have that. Even if we're allowing the kids to take the class, we're charging these other groups $100 more. They have to pay the Wyoming High School Association additional fee. And that's not something we have to charge. I mean, I'm looking right at the statute. The district may require the student to pay any fees. I would propose that it might be better to start bringing these kids back into the system and saying, yeah, we appreciate the contributions you're making on the field, on the stage, wherever they may be, and we're willing to help you out a little bit. I look back at the number of courses we require. I look at Samantha, my daughter. If we didn't even put her in band this year for the one class because trying to get her back over to the middle school for one class was a bridge too far given the studies that we have her doing. Now we're going to start telling these parents that they have to be there for two classes. It might totally disrupt the day you're doing. If you're in private school, they have their own agenda. I think you're going to wind up driving more people out than bringing them in. I think the whole slate here is wrong. I wanted to table this for 2 months because I think there are questions out there that need to be answered. I think we have an election coming up. Some of the same board members may be here. We know that we're going to have at least one new one just by you not retaining your seat. I think it's a discussion that has to be fully explored and fully dealt with.
So I have a question. Other than disagreeing with what's proposed, you had specific questions you thought where this chart was ambiguity.
Well,
ambiguity here.
for neighboring schools, we don't have the combination school agreement as something that we're requiring. The way I read that is it's two schools agreeing to work together. If anything would require that, it would be the neighboring school. I mean, to read the combination agreement, that's the first and foremost thing they're thinking about, the way I read it.
Yep.
The other thing is on the virtual schools here, we have Connections Academy down. Yes, there's another school district involved. I would love to see us get together with them, maybe at one of their meetings, maybe on the side, and work out a deal. But we would also have to work on that because you can be a part of Connections Academy and actually not be tied to another school district. I have one kid that I'm working with from my civilian job that has that exact situation. So I don't think we can be so broad as to just say Connections Academy if the intent is if you're in another Wyoming school district. So we'd want to look at that.
Can I comment on the minimum to maximum?
Yeah, please. That's what I was looking for, is discussion on that.
I am not in favor of requiring a minimum of classes for homeschool students or for private school for a multitude of reasons. One of them is the funding model that we just discussed, the major fraction rounding model. So if we have some students who are attending 50% of the day or 51% of the day, we're getting a full ADM for them. And they're not attending the whole day. So if they're missing two classes, we're still getting paid for those two classes. And I still need the information on how many of those students are we getting a full ADM on, okay, that would offset some of the cost of maybe one homeschool student taking one class. So I think there's an offset there that we can look at. And the other thing is I asked for the information on how many students are currently doing this at that it would become an issue. How many students do we have that are taking one class and we're not getting reimbursed? And there are zero right now in the middle school. That, unless I misunderstood, there's zero in the middle school. And so I think if we're going to open the conversation as far as dialoguing with the community and trying to work out what's best for in both ways, I don't think this is the best way to do it. And so I'm in favor of tabling it. I'm not in support of it and where we are right now, tonight.
A real-world example here to bring forth in support of what Kelly said. The kids in the ranch above me, I've been bugging them for years to come down here to the school. I go, I think you really need that. I'm a former teacher. And so the one boy took me up on it. Well, I mean, he did it with his parents. And he came down here, and he really not think he was going to have a good experience. He was pretty withdrawn about it and didn't like it. He liked it. Guess what? He's full-time now. And he did it with one class. So I would say to everyone, I think this board encourages all homeschoolers to come into the fold and perhaps join it 100%. I was in the schools for 20 years. I can guarantee you there's... so I'm pretty much... People. And Mr. Schulte, how many people are we talking about totally homeschool students that may be having one or more classes here? What is it, 10?
Probably not that much.
Not even that much. So let's get as many in here as we can and hope that it's a success story, like the kids above my ranch, because the brothers now wants to try it. So the other brother wants to.
Mr. Schulte?
Well, just real quick. So to remind the board, in September, we brought this to you as a work session item. So, in August, we had students wanting to register for school, and I had principals asking me, we have a student that's full-time in our school, but homeschooled. I don't know what that means. It's just different. It just, I think it's fair to say, shouldn't we question that? Or I don't care if, it doesn't matter to me if they're full-time, but did you know that as board members? I mean, did you know you had students that are homeschooled who are in our schools all day? Whatever. I don't think it matters, but we didn't have any guidelines. We have a homeschool policy that if I read this to most of you, you'd probably not agree with it, by the way, because it says we're going to admit kids into some courses and not others. We'll go on a case-by-case basis. I don't suspect that most of you would even agree with that. But what we do need, we need a little bit of guidance. Is there a minimum number of courses that a student could take? Is there a maximum number? You can put whatever number you want on that, courses. I don't think taking courses is much of an issue, but we have to be real clear. If a student is enrolled in another district, like Bighorn 1, we're not allowing them to enroll in Park 6. So we need to be clear on that, but we get asked that all the time. So we need some direction on that. The other thing, the activity piece, those fees are no different than what they are today. Billy, the catastrophic insurance, I'm not sure how that, I think everybody has to pay the $7 or $8, but it's $7 or $8, and I'm not sure about it. I think they do.
Yeah, I know.
But
I remember.
the thing that's different with the homeschool students have to pay the combination agreement. Virtual Academy, I don't know who pays that for the Virtual Academy students. But as Mr. Fulkerson pointed out, Bighorn number 1 will receive about $1,300 to do that work, and Park 6 would receive none of the money. So I don't know how far away you are from making this work, but I'm going to tell you, when I go back to the office tomorrow and I take phone calls from principals, they need to know what to tell parents. Because right now they're just kind of doing what they hope's best, and they don't want to alienate anybody, but they need better guidance than what we've been able to give them, because we haven't decided on all of these different scenarios, and there's a bunch of them.
We have inconsistencies in our policies.
So
That's why
this doesn't have to be, this needs to be, we need something in regulation. We need something that says if you're a virtual school student, can you sign up for classes, yes or no? Can you go out for activities, yes or no? If it's at the high school, what is it? Is there a fee, yes or no? And nobody's proposing a fee that's different than what our local kids are already paying, except for the virtual students, which that comes out as a different, I mean, that's a different beast. I mean, those kids are in a school where the state's spending money for them.
So, sorry, you haven't spoken yet?
And so, first of all, I'd like to thank you for bringing that up, because I think that this discussion has lacked the fact that this was brought to the board in a work session in September. And that's the reason why I'm a little concerned about waiting 2 months. I understand about the election, Mr. Strumke, but I would like to see this come back to a work session and have it be the policy JG and start working some of these issues through. I think the fact that it was brought forward tonight has been an opportunity to have part of the conversation and to speak to some clarity on these things. One of the one reason that I would have a concern about voting on this tonight is that there is one area that is missing, and it goes back to that issue of our virtual academy student that we denied several years ago, and that was in elementary school. This talks about CMS and CHS, but there's still a great deal of question about our elementary school. And when it comes to the minimum, I don't believe that, I don't feel strong enough that we would win that court case, and I certainly don't want it to go to a court case. I'd like to see the word encouragement, a kind of a friendly word. Children who reside in our district are welcome in our buildings, and they're welcome in our classes, and they're welcome in our programs, and there's nothing wrong with the administrators asking for the direction of the board, and I think that we should continue to work on it, and I think we can work on it next month as well.
So just to give some of the numbers that we were talking about, because it was brought out at the work session, are these numbers from the work session still accurate to the best of your knowledge? Okay. Thank you. So if we're looking at the homeschool, for CMS, we have 3 kids taking courses. We have 2 kids in activities. For the high school, we have 4 students taking 1 course. I actually know 3 of them. And 1 student taking 4 courses, which anybody wants to know, I have my own theory as to why they're doing that, and I can give it to you offline. And then for activities, there's 6 kids in the activities. Private school, the only number, it's zeros across the board except for 3 kids at the middle school taking activities. The virtual school, we have 2 kids at the middle school for activities, 3 at the high school. And neighboring schools is 0 across the board except there are 3 in activities at high school. So, yeah, I mean, really small numbers here. I mean, and we're talking about potentially alienating a community. Yeah, I don't like that. So those are the numbers that we have now. I'm assuming that once we have more activities come up in the spring, some of those will change, but that's what we have now.
So I would agree. The numbers are really small, but we want to be real clear what our parameters are. I don't want to tell some parent that their student shouldn't be in a class or couldn't be in an activity or something to that effect, only to find out that's not what the direction of the board is. So you give us that direction and we can follow it, but we need that.
I think that's what's driving it, is that we've had parents that are confused. They come in, they just, like you said, the grade school's not on here. Every parent with every child needs to be able to read that policy and say, what's the policy? I mean, we had some frustration last year. Parents were calling and saying, I've been told this, but then I was told this, what's the deal? So I think that's what's driving this. And I think Park 6 has always reached out to the home school. I mean, because we see it as an opportunity. I mean, we're trying to sell to it. There's growth. We need to show ourselves. We need to provide something to draw the kids in, and we're certainly not doing anything to alienate them. So, further discussion.
I just had one other comment. The other thing is, I would prefer to see an action item that was a policy action item rather than a guideline action item. That's just a side comment. But the second thing is, I think we need to speak to what Stephanie discussed, which is the legality of it. And I would like to see us sit down with, and we weren't given that information in the work session, to kind of go over what the Wyoming statutes say as far as what our obligations are to providing all students with an education. And I don't know that state statute speaks to our ability to set a minimum. And so I would not be comfortable voting on that until I knew what state law says and federal law both. So.
clarification on that last piece. What was your question? What did you?
Can we require 2 classes?
I want to see the state statutes that speak to our obligation to educate all students. I reviewed some of them today, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to put my legal interpretation on them, but I would like to know how those are informing our policy.
I did speak with Dave Northrup, and he does anticipate that there will be legislation this session having to do with some of the issues that we're struggling with. And so it'll be nice to see. So I asked him if he had a draft, and he anticipated a draft at the next Joint Education Committee. So I would still encourage the board in the idea that we want to table this for two months. I would not like to see us lose 2 months. I'd like to see us to do some work next month on it.
We can work at work sessions. It doesn't mean, I believe the way the motion is, it would come back up for a vote in 2 months. We'd skip one board meeting, the following board meeting it would be up as an action item. That's the way I interpret the motion. It doesn't mean we can't discuss it and become knowledgeable at a work session. Further discussion? Jenny?
I'm in agreement with most of what is said here tonight as far as learning more. I do think that statewide
My motion was at least 2 months, so.
Discussion?
We then decide through work session or whatever at the end of this 2 months or more. I think we should address also non-Park 6 students coming to our school. We recently had a request from a Worland student, was denied because it was almost a 200-mile round trip per day. Is that student going to be truant or whatever?
But that's a county issue, depending on where they reside. That's a different county.
But in my experience in education, I've actually seen students who have wanted to get into a certain good football program or something, and their parents rent a house in that community so they can play football with the better coach. And you see what I mean? There's all kinds of fraudulent activities that could take place there. So I wonder, should we also do non-Park 6? Because we are talking about Bighorn 1 here when we talk about the connections. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. I think it's a good point.
I don't
Consider
know,
non-Park 6.
When we denied the kid from Moreland, why did we do that? Is that our policy? Is our policy if you're commuting from more than 180 miles or 200 miles a day, round trip, you're not going to be able to come to our school? You see,
neighboring schools.
Can you speak to that, Ray? Because I think it's
Well,
part of what we should do here.
Scott, I'd just say, we have policy that allows us to make decisions on those types of requests. And I would hope that working with principals, if we have a request that just doesn't seem like it's going to be feasible for anybody, if it does not seem like a good plan, I think we have the right to do that. And people still have the right to appeal it to the board if they don't like our decision, but that's always an option. So I don't know, the neighboring schools, unless you want to talk about like a Matisse or a Powell participating in activities, they pay the fees like everybody else, and their school districts are members of the Wyoming High School Activities Association. So they're already part of that group because they paid their membership. But I don't know if that, I think that other one's a little bit too.
It's hard to set a policy for that. That's just
Yeah,
a one-off. That's a course.
That might happen once every
That's
10
academics.
years. But
Yeah.
I can just ask one other question that maybe you could bring the answer to the work session. But in the instance that you had a homeschool student or a private school student who enrolled in math or reading, one of the core classes, and they became, so if you got like a half ADM for them, at what point would they be required, or would they be required to take PAWS or one of our assessments? Could you answer that?
Mr. Foley, the cause test?
Yeah, that one. I know that one, but I believe that it's required.
It's required if they take one or two, or how does that work?
If they're in our schools.
If they're enrolled, period, or if they're if they're in band, they have to take PAWS, or?
I believe so. I'll have to check on that for sure.
I was going to say, don't we
I
have
know the state did some adjustment with that in the recent years.
don't we have kids that are actually full-time students opting out of that too? I mean, because I thought we did.
And I thought they took that option away, though.
We should look. Yeah.
Okay, so back to action item 5.4. There's a motion on the table to adjourn for at least, to table for at least 2 months, setting guidelines and fees for non-park students. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Well, we've now been at it for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess.
You know, so they already knew most of it. No, this is typical. They kind of make big, you know, what are the different opportunities? Yes, sir.
How are you?
Was it video? Shot it early. Oh, okay. Maybe you told me that already. Oh, yeah, you got hair up. You know, they say that hair up. Oh, yeah. Oh, they used to get primer. Make it better mouth. Oh, they're Julie. Oh, that's not Julie? That's Carol Armstrong. Oh. Why was Julie on here? If your child's having a fear?
Well, I don't know.
I'm afraid I didn't hear about that. I'm not told me.
Well, her daughter would be about
21.
Oh,
Not even
about 18.
Once again, I think we're waiting on Trustee Simone. Oh, sorry. Action item 5.5, third reading, education philosophy.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we pass on final reading educational philosophy. Does somebody have the letters, please?
Remember, it's in the first thing, it's before that.
That's right. It's a preamble.
Yeah, it is a preamble. There's a motion and a second to approve the educational philosophy on final and third reading. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Action item 5.6, third reading of policy GCCAC/GDCC, maternity paternity leave, certified and classified.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we pass on third and final reading policy GCCAC/GDCC.
There's a motion and a second to approve the policy. Thank you. Is there further discussion?
I'd just like to say ditto.
I know we talked about it, and I don't know how we ever landed on 6. I don't remember that part of the discussion because
I do. I do, because I spearheaded it.
Oh, okay. So about 40 minutes on just that one number.
All right.
We missed your vote.
But that's all right.
The age limit was that children who are 6 years of age or older will be in school.
They'll be in school.
And so it wasn't necessary for a parent to be home with a child when the child is in school.
So parents home, the child in school. The parents home.
Yes, so you're not going to sit there for 2 weeks with your kid and watch, Ryan's Hope or whatever it is.
Wow.
The kid's going to go to school and the teacher's at home. The teacher ought to be teaching.
Words. So following the word adoption, strike the words following the word of adoption. I'd like to second that amendment. You did.
So she said strike the word 6, so there'd be no age limit. What did you do? You did something different?
you just friendly amended my amendment. So it would be, my amendment to Jenny's amendment would be, sorry, Angie, strike the words following adoption. Strike of a child under the age of 6 years.
Oh, for adoption. Oh, I see. So who motion?
She made the amendment. I
Yeah.
seconded it.
Okay.
And so now we just have to vote on the amendment.
Okay. So the original motion was to approve as presented. The amendment that we're voting on now strikes any reference to the age of a child under the age 6. I'll remind the board there's 6 people tonight.
Right.
And it takes a quorum to pass.
6-4.
Okay. So is everybody clear on what we're voting on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All those in
Wait. Can we discuss?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were done yet.
So maybe you can, and I look this way, but I could be looking this way just as easily. Somebody could tell me why. I mean, the reality is I think Scott, while maybe I don't agree with how he put it, I think has a fine point. I mean, if the child is in school, when I'm back on the bonding time, kids at school, you're what, doing what at home. So I don't see the need for anyone under 6. There is a point where we have to probably cut bait, and I think that's it. You just put it as 6. I think.
I think we discussed this for 40 minutes. We discussed both sides. I mean, for Kelly's benefit, we have, so.
I don't want to rehash the whole discussion.
No,
that
I
already happened in
understand. I think we
September.
just vote. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we're all pretty clear.
I'm sure it's the same being a mom, and from the perspective of, I think when you adopt a child, you don't always know what age it's going to be, and there is a period of bonding, and I'm not opposed to giving people, 10 days to have bonding regardless of age if they adopt a new child. I think that that's important to the parent-child bond. So it's a priority for me, and I don't mean to rehash it.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're new. You can say whatever you want to because you weren't there before. But as long as that's Mr. Schultz, do you have any final comments?
I have a comment. I don't know that the board talked about the fact that this is a classified and certified employee policy. So a fair number of our people work 12 months. So, Scott, it is possible that somebody could adopt an 8-year-old child, and they may be at work when school may not be in session. I don't know if you want to factor that in, but it is a possibility.
Okay, so now that I understand, make sure that, any further discussion? Okay. So the amended motion will be, as presented, striking the words following adoption, basically eliminating the age limit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. We need to vote. Everybody needs, you can't abstain on this one.
No, I know. I just had another thought.
Now
I know.
we're voting.
I know.
Yay or nay?
I'm going.
Is it too late to ask for a roll call?
No. Just, we have one. Yeah, it's too late.
Just checking.
Yay. I think I'm going to go with yay.
Okay, motion carries.
Sorry, Scott. I just.
the amendment
No,
carries.
hold on. Let me. I want to take 2 seconds to tell you why. Hold on. I'm going to take the floor here. The reason being, Scott, and all accounts I agree with you, and I wanted to say no. But the reality is, I just realized that adopting 15-year-olds, they don't get adopted. Okay, and if this helps encourage to adopt kids that aren't newborns, then I will switch my vote so that we can see some kids that aren't, let's say, the less desirables out there get adopted as well.
So point of clarification, we voted on the amendment, which eliminated the last. So now we go back and vote on the original motion. So the original motion was, yeah, I'm confused. The original motion, are you sure? We vote on the original motion?
Yes.
So the original motion is back to including it. We just,
No, we amended it.
right? Right.
So now the motion reads as it does.
Okay.
With that change, we now vote on that motion.
Oh,
Yeah, and I just would like to call for the question so that no more board members can say stuff about this, so let's vote.
okay, so now we're voting. So now we're voting on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Now we'll move on.
Everyone was with me.
You flopped on your own motion. What are you? Okay, action item 5.6. No, it's 5.7. Second reading. GCQCA, resignation of professional staff.
I'd make a motion that we approve on second reading, moving to third reading, policy GCQCA, resignation of professional staff.
There's a motion and a second to move to second reading, policy GCQCA. Is there any discussion? Move, sorry, to third. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of policy introduction definition. This is another preamble policy without a... Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve on first reading, moving to second reading, policy introduction titled definitions.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to move to second reading, policy introduction definitions. Is there any discussion?
I have some discussion on number 7, where it says supervisor shall appoint any individual who has authority acting for the school district to hire, transfer, suspend, lay off, recall, promote, discharge, all of that. I'm wondering if that policy needs to just have a little bit of clarification. I read that to mean that they would be acting in the capacity of the school superintendent should he or she not be available, but I think that maybe that needs to be defined a little bit better.
With more clarity, or what specifically did you have in mind? We need to give staff in between first and second reading, and we do this a lot, so we appreciate the feedback. But
I guess I don't have anything. I apologize. I don't have any wording right now, but I would be happy to forward some.
okay, if you could work with Mr. Schulte.
I could do that.
Is there further discussion?
See down lower where it says supervisor shall include, but not limited to, and then it lists the one, you mean
I just think,
more clarification than...
I think that paragraph is a little bit confusing, so I'd just like to see it cleaned up.
Discussion? There's a motion to move this to second reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Action item 5.9. Policy introduction. Policies are not a contract. So before we do this for the public, there's been some discussion. We have a lot of policies from 1993, 1998 that have not been looked at. So we try to get through them. And a lot of the policies, there's no changes. There have been very few changes in some of these policies. But everybody looks at them. The administrative team looks at them. The board looks at them. And we can put a more current date on it. So you try to... It seems like a lot of the policy changes we make are reactionary, like some of the policies we talked about. We see a problem and we create a policy to fix it. So hopefully we can get a little ahead of this. We look at some of these policies and make some changes. Okay, now action item 5.9, policies are not a contract.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve on first reading, going to second reading, the policy introduction. Policies are not a contract.
There's a motion and a second to move policies are not a contract to second reading. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of policy BB, legal school board status.
Mr. Chair, I would actually move that we strike policy BB from our policy manual.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
So here's where we're getting back into some of these policies that are just a recitation of law. I am always hesitant to say the law is that you follow the law. I look at this policy here, and it straight up, the second half of it, quotes the law state and then quotes Wyoming statute 213105. I don't know why we need to do that. I think that our
legal status is what it is. We have the right, based off the law, and if anybody questions that, they can pick up a statute book and read it. We don't need to start having within our policy manual every single law that applies to us reiterated. I think it's a silly waste of time, and I would just strike it altogether.
I think on the surface, that makes a lot of sense, and I believe you've raised this in the past. Mr. Schulte, can you speak to it? I mean, some laws we're required to follow. They're federally mandated or state mandated, and we put them in policy. Just they apply to schools. They're not broad-based, and so if there's any question within the district, people can go right to our policies rather than try to find it in federal or state statutes. That's been the reason in the past.
And some of the policy might tie back to school accreditation. It might tie back to a Title I requirement. I don't know if this one does that, but I would offer this to the board. If you're going to move to strike this policy, why don't you consider taking 2 readings to get rid of it, just like we do 3 readings to add one, and then that gives you a month to. It gives me a month to ask those questions. If this policy goes away, what does it hurt? Because I really don't know the answer to that. It may not hurt anything, but
Well, I would amend the motion then. Still looking to strike it. I'm trying to figure out how I'd word this. Move to review for striking. Is that a word? I'm going to make it a word. To second reading for that purpose. Yes.
Just to,
Move to delete past first reading, I guess. Right.
if it passes.
Right. So move to
delete upon second reading.
Move to review for deletion.
Of the statute could be placed under the definitions of what constitutes a board. It would be moving it in a different, it would be moving it to a different policy within the policy manual, but the very first definition is board. And so if you replace that definition of board with what the statute calls a board, would that be an appropriate place for it?
Concern with completely deleting it, Billy, is like what Jake just said. I mean, if I want to know the definition of a board, I either can look at policy and reference it quickly, or I am spending time searching Wyoming state statutes trying to find it. And so I think for parents and for the public, it's a quicker way to access the definition. And that's why I would be in support of keeping it.
Mr. Weber?
I think we should keep it, and I'll tell you why. There was a question in the candidate forum the other night about what's the difference between the board and the superintendent, and some of them didn't get it. A lot of them didn't get it, and Woody Wilkerson read something quite like this, although it was a state statute, and everybody goes, oh, now I get it, which I couldn't believe some of the answers. So I think that, Bill, I think something like this is good. Because a parent might question, well, what authority does a board have to do blank? There it is.
I would like to treat this like we do other policies, move it to second reading with encouragement to staff to look at the parts that might need cleaning up or altering. So, but right now there's a motion. Is there further discussion?
Sorry, I just have one other comment. It was adopted in 1998, and so my question would be just to re-reference the Wyoming Statute 21-3-105 and make sure that there hasn't been any changes to that statute to make sure that the statute's current.
That makes sense.
What I'm doing right now, actually.
So I don't support deleting it, and I think it's just a matter of making it available to people, and I don't see it as a waste of space, especially we're not producing big policy manuals. It's just something that's available on the internet, and so I don't support the deletion.
So there's a motion and a second to delete upon review policy, legal board legal status, called policy BB. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Aye. Motion. Motion fails. So I'll entertain another motion.
Make a motion that we pass from first to second reading, policy BB.
There's a motion, a second, to move to second reading, policy BB. Is there further discussion? I just encourage Mr. Schulte to follow up on Trustee Simone's comment on the revised statute. It has been a while, so we want to make sure it does match the current law. That would make sense. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. First reading of policy BBAA, Board Member Authority and Responsibilities.
I'd make a motion that we approve policy BBAA, moving it from first to second reading. Or I shouldn't say approve. Let me change that. I would make a motion that we would move policy BBAA from first to second reading.
There's a motion and a second to move policy BBAA to second reading. Is there discussion? I like this policy. I specifically like the last paragraph. I think it's good for all of us to read that. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of policy BBB, School Board Elections and Membership.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we pass from first to second reading, policy BBB, with the following change. In the very last line, it reads, a qualified person may be nominated for the office by filling an application for election. It says with the county clerk in the manner provided by law, and I'd just like to include Park County Clerk.
So there's a motion to move to second reading policy BB with the addition of one word, Park, the Park County Clerk. Is there further discussion?
I would just say this falls under the same argument I had on policy BB. I don't like repeating stuff.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. Motion carries. Board member resignations, policy BBBC, first reading.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we take up policy at the next work session that's available. There's just some issues as far as this policy.
So that,
If you'd like me to table it,
well, I don't know what I don't understand your motion.
should I start changing it?
You want to take it up I make a motion, we take it up at a work session?
Put it on our next work session.
Second the motion for discussion.
I think the changes that are going to take place in this policy should, I'm not prepared to go ahead and offer those tonight. If you'd like me to just go through a couple of them. We just have some issues with it.
Okay, so don't we have three readings. So in
So
the
if
past, if we needed clarification, we would move it to second reading, and then,
If you'd like me to do that, I can do that.
I don't know, that's why I just, for consistency, it's a
No,
pretty
I
short
know.
policy. I'm not saying it's perfect. I don't know what the issues are. I'm just trying to keep things moving.
I would lean towards, we can work on it between first and second. Do you think we can?
We certainly can. I just, it's just hard because sometimes as board members, we forget about them. And so I thought I'd make my point by saying if we could put it on the next board agenda or work session agenda, that would be a way to do it. So I'd like to withdraw my motion and make a motion that somebody else can make the motion.
You're withdrawing your motion. So
Mr.
do we have a
Fulkerson.
friendly second to withdraw her motion? Okay, so now we have no motion, so I guess we can
I
discuss
would
whatever
just-
we want to.
This is one policy that the board has had to deal with the last few years, and it has had some issues. So it probably does take more conversation than the other ones. I mean, it's not one you're going to be able to eliminate, because it's probably not redundant. And it needs a little more time. If you want to put it on a November work session, I think that's fine. I mean, you could certainly, you could do it then.
We can move it to second reading and still put it on the November
Right,
work
we could
session.
do that. But it is a policy that we've had some struggles with.
I agree. Ray and I probably spent 15 minutes on today talking about it. What's happened in the past, what could you change, what can't you change? And I finally landed that I like the way it does take board action to do something. I mean, at first I thought it'd be nice if you got a resignation, it's effective the day it hits the chairman's hand, but I think the way it's written that the board has to take action on it before it's effective. So I kind of like the way it's written, but I haven't seen, oh, I see.
Regularly scheduled board meeting could be 21 days from the time you receive a resignation, and by statute, you have to reappoint somebody within 30 days of the resignation, or the county commissioners do it for you.
So it's,
Yeah, it could be 29. Yeah, it depends when you get it. If you get it the night of after the. Okay, so do you want to, so we either need to, it's an action item, it's on the agenda, we need to table it or move it to second reading?
So I'll make a motion that we would move policy BBBC from first to second reading and add that it would be on the work session agenda for November. Can I do that?
So there's a motion and a second to move policy BBC to second reading with a work session November. Is there a discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Action item 5.14, approval of CMS Close-Up Club.
Chair, I'd make a motion for approval of the CMS Close-Up Club.
Does that include funding chaperones that are requested? I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion is just approval without any funding, is what I heard. So now in discussion, we can talk about the funding.
Right. So I saw in there that the request was for a scholarship to fund one student, or to match, was it 50% for a chaperone? And I guess that's the part that the board needs to decide.
I'm not aware of another club where we make such budgetary commitments.
I give them points for Moxie.
I think it's a great
These are the first
program.
people that have asked for approval of a club and for Doe. I mean, none of the other clubs the similar clubs that are doing this have simply asked to go somewhere or put their club together. So, I mean, I was real proud of them for coming forward. That I don't support it at all, but I'm proud of them.
And said, I mean, he said that it's worth asking. I mean, you can't
Oh,
know if you don't ask, but I would be in favor of the club, but I'm with Stephanie. It's not a consistent practice to do that, so I don't want to
Talk
start
about open the door.
doing it.
Consistency. Is there further discussion? So there's a motion on the floor to approve the close-up club.
Because the proposal that they submitted to us included, I think it included it. So if the close-up club proposal, I believe if you scroll down, includes the dollar amount, and we would have to amend their proposal or ask them to, because their price of $16.08 has actually increased, as Mr. Duncan indicated, to $17.47. I'm talking off the top of my head. But their proposal includes sponsorship, I think.
So could you amend your motion to consider any type of funding?
Okay. So I would amend the motion to approve the close-up club without so I would amend the travel cost to reflect the numbers that Mr. Duncan gave us today. So striking the 1608 from their proposal and changing it with today. And then under 7C, it says we are asking for the district to contribute funds to scholarship the trip of one student and or offset the cost of a second chaperone. So I guess can we
That's
ask
what I read
them
they were
to,
asking.
can we ask them to amend their proposal, or?
No, you could approve the formation of the club with no funding from the district or the board. And I wouldn't address the travel costs. They could go up and down between now and then. I would stay
Okay.
away from the travel costs too.
So maybe just striking the travel costs.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to approve the close-up club, but without providing funding as requested.
Good. So there's a motion and a second to approve. That's what I heard. So there's a motion and a second to approve the close-up club with no additional funding from the district or the board. Is there any discussion?
Is there a difference?
So I appreciate the efforts. This is another great example of our teachers going above and beyond to put something in front of the students to experience our government. It's nonpartisan. I mean, it's really neat what they're doing. So I appreciate their efforts. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Board reports. Trustee Simone. Board reports. Okay. Board reports.
I don't have anything specific to report at this time.
That's allowable. I'm with you. Trustee Weber.
Turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Yes, I've toured the weight room. It's very impressive, very nice. I have attended all of the candidate forums and get-togethers with the candidates, and I'm pleased to see that the majority of them are very electable. So it's going to be real interesting on November 8th.
So I toured the schools. One of the downsides of not being a school liaison is I don't have something on my calendar to get out to the schools, and I actually miss that. I miss that side of not having a school liaison. But Trustee Rosencrantz and I toured the schools, saw the rate room, went in the grade schools, and it's really helpful. I'd encourage the trustees to get around and look at it. You know, as we're looking at some of the facility issues, you know, you can go. So Eastside comes up. We need to funnel the kids as they come through the front door. Well, I get it. I don't know how they're going to do that, but once you come through the door, you can see where they can get through the door and just get into the school. But if you're not in the schools looking at that, you won't. So I'd encourage the trustees to get around. And I too like how the weight room looked at. I looked at that. That's all I have.
I don't have anything to report. I would just wish all the candidates the best of luck here in the next couple weeks.
I have attended the activities committee meeting last month, as well as the second meeting within the last month. There was a lot of good discussion at both, with some things that may require some board action coming up in the next couple of months.
I was fortunate enough to attend State Band this weekend. It was my first time I've ever been at State Band, and everybody should go because, man, that's quite a show. And so I'd like to congratulate the CHS Band and Color Guard on their superior. And boy, it's just extraordinary what students do. I would love to see the amount of hours that is represented by the outstanding work that's done on that floor. When I think that they said, I can't remember if it was 1,800 kids when all of those bands were assembled on the floor, and it was just extraordinary. And we have amazing students, and so congratulations.
So I'm now going to take you to the section under reports. There's some paperwork in your packet. The first one is the consultants. There was discussion. The trustees wanted to be informed of the consultants that we have, so that information's in there. There's the letter from the Wyoming Department of Education. Mr. Wood? Congratulations on your letter.
Well, thank you very much.
So we want to point that out. I think it's It's outstanding. It's really neat to be singled out. So we appreciate the efforts there. The NSBA conference in Denver, March 25th through the 27th. The registration is open, and we have found that if you want to have a room within 4 miles or within 45 minutes by bus, that it's good to make at least your room reservations. But that requires, and there's a cancellation. But if you think you're going to go, we need to get to Angie in the next 6 hours. Okay, so we need to register. Oh, and there's no cancellation on registering for the conference, right? Okay, so it's all in or all out. So if you can pick those dates and then get back to Angie, it's tomorrow. Yeah. After that, is there questions?
No, I'd just like to talk about this since we're on the topic now. We've done this. I've done 2 of these. I think they're very worthwhile for those candidates that are in the room that haven't done it. I would recommend, should you get on the board, letting Angie know that you'd want to go to it as well if you can. It's a great thing to do. The only thing that I do hesitate on is that we're talking about we have to get in so that we can get the rooms reserved. I've done this twice now, and I think the first year I took the room that they recommend. The second year I didn't. And there was a definite cost savings to not taking the room that they have blocked out. I would love to see a policy coming forward that we don't spend so much money on hotels that frankly don't give us what we're doing other than it's just close, right? We can walk maybe to the conference. There are plenty of other options out there that will save the district money. We're doing these conferences yearly now. I know at one point we talked about not doing it yearly. We are doing it yearly. And if there are ways, Boston, I was half the rate that some of the board members were for their rooms. It seems silly to be spending so much money when we don't have to. And while we don't have a policy on it, I would encourage people to look at what they're spending on rooms.
This is just a heads up for the board. These are the dates. If you can go, let Angie know, because we do need to we need to get registered for the conference, and we do need room reservations. And it's important to get those reservations made. Further discussion?
I know that this is the room date, but I'm just kind of curious to get who is going to Wyoming School Boards Association. I know that I am.
Oh, that's not here, is it?
It's the 14th. No, 17th is, I think.
16th and 17th?
So it's 15th, 16th.
Yeah. So 16 and 17. 16, 17, 18. That's a thank you. That's a very good question. So who's going? Okay. Are you going to be able to go?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
And so then my next question would also be that we had worked so hard to get the Sue Bellish and have a board work session, and I think we were looking at November 1st.
No, November 29th.
Sorry.
November 29th.
That's right, it was after Thanksgiving.
That's a real important.
It is.
And that will be the new board.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's it. That's what we're talking about with Sue Bellish.
I just know that when we brought up the date, there were some members that weren't able to be there, and I think that Mr. Schulte did a great job of changing that date, and we thought that we'd met everybody's expectation, and so I'm just wondering.
Well, and for the trustee candidates in the room, the election is the 8th, and they have to be sworn in within 10 days. But they don't officially take office until December 1st, but we will invite them to this training on the 29th. So it's not new board member training, but it's board governance. It's a very important.
It's important for all the board members to be there.
I agree. And that's the 29th. So that leads us to the, is it here? The board member events? Is the events calendar in here?
Yes, so the board training is
Yep. So the board training's on there. Thank you for pointing that out. Superintendent report.
Chairman Fulkerson, the first thing I have, I want to congratulate, we did get a letter from WDE that was addressed to the Special Education Department and Peg Monteith, and just wanted to report that the audit was very positive, and one of the things that Peg shared a couple weeks ago, we did a parent survey, and it had actually one of the highest satisfaction returns that I've seen on a survey in a long, long time. So congratulations to Mrs. Monteith and the SPED department. The second item on here, and I know that this has been talked about, I have talked about putting together a budget committee. I put a memo in the board packet why I would work with this group of people, what the purpose would be. In the memo, I talk about who would be included, what their work would be. Basically, a group of individuals that would really look at the budget, look at our revenues, look at our expenditures, look at possible options for making changes, which those changes could either generate more money or reduce our expenses. I mean, those are the two things we're going to most likely be faced with. I don't know how much money we're going to be talking about. Right now, we could be looking at a $500,000 deficit for next year. It might be less than that. This legislative session, when they meet in January and February, they may decide that our deficit's going to be, 3 times that amount. But we won't know that until the 1st of March. The challenge we have is our legislators adopt a budget in early March. The governor most likely would approve it in the middle of March. That doesn't give us a great deal of time to make adjustments if we have to make some serious changes. So that is my thought is we work with a group of people, we put together a list of potential cuts, if you will. And I know one of the concerns is getting this committee too far out in front of where the board might be. I can tell you it would certainly be my intent to let people know quite clearly that a committee just comes together, they look at information, they make recommendations. Ultimately, the board's going to make the decision. And you would always, you're the ones that will approve a preliminary budget, you're the ones that will approve a final budget. And certainly the board's the one that's going to take action on salary and benefits, which impacts the biggest portion of our budget. However, if you as a board have other wishes as far as how we prepare for the next budget season, then we need to discuss that. And I don't know if that's discuss it now or.
If the board chooses to do it, I think, Mr. Schulte's looking for input. There's parts that we like, there's parts that we like. I think one thing that came to mind for me was getting staff on it. If the staff feels like they have a seat at the table, and they're very tough conversations. So the staff will be there. I think the difficult part is going to be educating the public. That's it's a very unique model. But I appreciate that the superintendents, we talk about transparency, we talk about involvement, and I think this committee achieves everything. I think it's going to be real important for the superintendent at the first meeting to just say, the board has the final say. This is an advisory committee that will be providing options to the board for them to consider in the future budget cycle. And that's all of it. The worst thing you can do is put a committee together and then blow them off and not take any of their feedback. But I think if all the cards are on the table, I think they provide some good feedback for us.
I would rather not see a committee. I would rather see a more conventional approach where the superintendent gives a dollar amount from each department and/or a percentage that they must cut.
It's not that simple. It's so much more complicated.
I don't really like a committee with parents and things of that nature on it. I think we need a harder line. The party's over. We're in a bus cycle. We got to move on this. I'd rather do it in a more cut and dry way instead of a more liberal kumbaya way where everybody massages each other and says that they hope their department doesn't get cut. We know that there'll be cuts in programs and in salary or in teachers where Mr. Strumpke Tom Sarvey just said our treasurer, 83% of the budget's in salary and benefit. There's where you're going to cut. We're not going to cut in the 15%.
Mr. Fulkerson, could
Right,
you use your
so I
microphone?
think that most districts do it that way. They don't have some committee that goes in there and then the board's forced to fight that committee or to disavow that committee. I don't like that.
Well, that's kind of my sentiment as well. The reality is and I think Mr. Fulkerson, Chairman Fulkerson said it at the end of what he was saying. He said, look, we don't want to have a committee and then just ignore them. I think that's the danger with committees, right? They give you a presentation, and so that you don't look like you're ignoring them, you go, oh, yeah, they did a great job, we'll say yes. And I don't want to be put in that position. The reality is the committee's been formed. It's the voters of Park County School District number 6, and they voted us into office. And so now we need to do our jobs, and I don't want to turn back around and say we're afraid to do that without them giving us, a second vote? Yeah, we really think it's cool now. We abrogate so much of our authority to these committees that it becomes almost moot to have us. I think we have a job. We need to do the job. When things are presented to us as potential cuts through the superintendent, we'll take a look at them and handle it that way. To ask the public to come together again is just too much from my standpoint.
I would just comment that we have board policy that speaks to this. And so I would reference board policy BDE. It says, it speaks to board committees. It says special committees, however, may be created for special assignments. The chairman of the board may appoint committees to assist the board and administrative officers of the school. The function of these committees shall be advisory. They should not have the authority to obligate the district financially, nor shall they exercise executive authority without consent of the board. And then the committee would be dissolved upon completion of its assignment. Also, under board operational goals, number 2 on that says the board shall involve the community when feasible in the development of district goals. The board shall endeavor to provide the community with information about school affairs, but it doesn't speak to having, and I'm not saying that I am opposed to community input, but policy, we already have policy that speaks to this. It says the board is responsible for the adoption of a budget, which will provide the resources in terms of building staff materials. It talks about who should be on the board under policy on the committee, under policy DBC. It says budget planning and preparation will be a year-round process involving broad participation of administrators, principals, secretaries, teachers, custodians, lunchroom supervisors. And then it goes on to talk about district budget priorities. I'm of the mindset that I would prefer to do the work, and I've talked to the superintendent about this previously, that I think as a board member elected to office, we've been elected and charged with the responsibility of the vote on the budget. And I would prefer to do the work and then try to figure out where our priorities are and where we think we can, we're all comfortable with making adjustments. And then maybe once we've kind of prioritized our priorities or put it in what we think possibly could be done, then maybe get committee input. But I think to have a committee get out in front of the board and then come with recommendations, put you in a position as a board member of these are their recommendations. They've now spent 6 months working on their recommendations. And now I'm in a position where I have to then do the work to see if I agree with their work. And I feel like that is putting the cart ahead of the horse, and where we already have policy that speaks to the issue.
A lot of this proposal as the school staff coming together as a group to have some buy-in to figure out some options for the board. I think that if it's done well, it can be a very good resource for the board as far as looking at where we're going to have to make cuts. I do think that it's important to have buy-in from the staff. I think that some of the ideas that we'll get that are very good ideas will come from the staff. My only suggestion, if there is going to be a committee, which it looks like a committee of staff would fall within board policy, is that maybe a board member or two serve on that policy so that when Mr. Schulte comes to us with quick adjustments to serious changes, as he said, that we're not all trying to get up to speed as to what research has already been done, what legwork's been done. If there are a couple of us in the meetings participating and hearing the ideas, then perhaps we can help come to those quick adjustments and big decisions quickly. Because if we're trying to do this in March and we're just learning of all of this stuff that has to be done, I think tonight's meeting proves we don't act quickly. So I think that we need to take that into consideration, and I think that the idea of having a committee that includes school staff members from all facets, the superintendent, the administrators, and a couple of board members might make this a viable committee.
I'm a little torn on this because one of the things that I think that I've heard that the city does really well is their idea of a citizens academy. The idea where they take citizens and they show them all the different departments of the city and they educate them on different things. And we know that when we start talking about the budget, even when we were talking about activity funding earlier, it gets confusing really fast. And I really think that it would be wonderful if we had a way by which we could take and invite people and start having the conversation about how we do business. I think that that's exciting. I think that community input is exciting because there are a lot of people who are cutting costs. There are a lot of different entities that are cutting costs. And if we can benefit from their experience, I think that would be exciting. I guess my only concern is that I don't want to have a committee come back and have done a lot of work and then have that rejected by the board. But I think that in some areas, we can solicit input that could be very, very valuable. And certainly we need to seek input from our employees. So I guess my one concern about what I've heard board members say tonight is it's acting like we're not going to continue working while this committee is working. I think that we will have new board members, and I think everybody can do with some increased information about how the budget works and all of those things that we do and we don't have control over. And so I guess I see an option on both sides. When we first talked about this subject, I thought it was more community rather than staff. So I don't know where I had that misperception. So I'm learning about it more, but I certainly think that there are people who have input that could help us in general sense.
I think it's a good point. The board is still going to do our normal budgetary process. And you know how that changes from month to month to month. So we're not going to do anything different the way we operate. This committee would start sooner and possibly be parallel. So it's the one thing the staff is looking for is a seat at the table. I mean, they know these cuts are coming. And the way to get buy-in is for the staff to perceive that. The other thing is when the trustees were elected 2 years ago, the big deal was to have transparency in the community and let the people know in the community what's going on. We talked about getting experts from the community to help the district succeed. And man, that's huge. Finding these people to put in this time to learn this stuff, I mean, it is a big deal. So I fully support the concept. Again, my biggest fear is that we won't, and they're not going to come, here's the top 10 things we want, here are the top 3 that are deal breakers. This is not like the interspace problem solving with the CEA. Don't confuse that. This is not what I see with them. This is another advisory role. So, with that, I would support it. It doesn't absolve us of anything. It's not like we're saying, okay, here, you guys work the budget out, we're going to rubber stamp this when this comes through. That's not even close.
So maybe I should clarify, because maybe there's a misunderstanding. My intent is not that there should not be community input at all. But what I am saying is that the budget work that the board does is basically budget updates. We have not sat down as a board and done budget priorities in the face of budget cuts. And so I would say that what we've done so far is we've looked at the budget, but I don't think we've actually made the effort to sit down and look at priorities. And I think that I would prefer, as a trustee, to go at it from that angle so that I'm fully aware of what we're working with and what our priorities are with before a committee sits out for 6 months and does all the work, and then in March they come to us with the work, and then I have to do the work on the back end of it, trying to figure out, is this... And I think I'm leaning more towards what Jenny suggested. I think board members, if this committee goes forward, need to be a part of that. I don't disagree that staff need to have a seat at the table. I think I would have more questions as to whether or not is the committee a voting committee? Do they vote on their advisements? How does that work? What does it look like?
And I agree with what Kelly's saying, but I want to kind of extend it as well to the teachers and the staff. I'm not saying to cut them out, but during the normal process, the superintendent should be going to his staff and saying, "Look, guys, we're in hard budget times. What do you need to keep? What do we need to do?" And then he should, when we sit down to do this work that Kelly's talking about, that forget about looking at it during hard budget times. We haven't done it at all that I remember since being on 2 years of the board, and maybe we have, and I missed it, but I don't think we have. And so when we turn around to the representative of the school, the man who should have his finger on the pulse, and say, "Hey, Superintendent Schulte, what are the needs of the school? We've got to make some slashes here. You've talked to your people. What have they said?" And he says, "Well, they're really concerned about losing books." I don't know. We go, "Wow, that's really interesting," and here we go. I don't think we need a committee to sit down and do that. You should have the power to talk to your staff as it is. So I want to hear from the teachers. I definitely want to hear from the community, and in no way, shape, or form am I trying to not be transparent. So if that implication's out there, I'd like to check that at the door. I just don't think we need a committee to get those opinions across. And I will add, too, I said that my concern was that it already been said once that we need to make sure we listen to that committee and we don't just ignore them. It was said 2 more times after I expressed my concern about that, and that's the exact problem with the committee, is if we don't accept them. We heard it on the books when the books came to this board. They've worked for 3 years, we heard. And if we don't take it, we will discount all the work they did. And now we're going to have to hear that with the committee on budget too, and I can't do it.
Was involved. I was a teacher in a very large school district in Ohio. And there, schools are funded by levies. And when levies fail, and sometimes they do in time after time, I can remember when we made cuts of millions of dollars, and the only 2 people who really had anything to say about it were the treasurer and the superintendent. They didn't go to committees and stuff. They go, "We're trimming $5 million. And here's what we're doing." Guess what? My class size went to like 30 kids from 19. So we don't need a committee to figure that out. I think Mr. Schulte's going to be saying, "I need $1 million out here, and I need $1 million out here, and I need $400,000 out here." And it's not going to take rocket science to figure out how that's going to work. See, Mr. Schulte's smiling. He's been in education for several decades. So it's, and I'm right, the kumbaya liberals can get around and go, oh my gosh, it's terrible, I want to keep Mrs. Jones or whatever. Ain't how it works. Whack, hatchet, cut. And it's going to be worse than what we think it is now. So this committee is, I would listen to him, but I'm only interested in really hearing this man and that man with that tie over there. They're the two, that's where rubber meets road.
Any final comments?
Once again, I'm accused of being a liberal. That doesn't happen very often, Scott. That's okay. Listening to the board, the committee was a proposal. If I'm not going to bring a group of people together and have them go to all this work, if it's going to, if the information is going to be questioned or even if it's not the way you want to go, I don't have an issue with that. And I know that I can sit down with Tom Sarvey and we can make $2.5 million in cuts. Actually, we probably could do that. I'm quite certain we could do that. I don't agree that that's how it should be done, but I think we just need to plan, probably starting whenever you want to start doing it. We need to pull the funding model apart, look at what's inside the model, what's outside the model, what's reimbursed, what's not reimbursed. We have to look at, we can show you lots of information as far as class sizes and staffing across the district, and we can bring that to you. Some of that's going to be, we can bring that to the board, but I think you better plan on more than just dealing with it at a regular board meeting in March. I mean, you're going to need some work sessions, maybe more than one a month, but I'm fine with doing that. I'm not going to organize a committee if it's not what the board is in favor of. I'm fine with that.
I have a suggestion. In November, we do our annual board evaluation, and we'll meet in November for the work session, and we'll do the superintendent evaluation, the board evaluation. And when we do that board evaluation, we're held to our specific norms as far as budget. Have we done this? Have we done this? Have we done this? The board hasn't been complete as far as a work session, during some of these conversations. Maybe tonight has been the biggest airing of concerns. And so people are going to think a little bit more about that. And so when we individually score the board and we go down through the evaluation, and then when we meet to go through it, maybe it'll be a clarifying moment when we really know where we want to go from here, because I think we agree a few things, and that is that if we don't know where we're going, it's not going to go very well. Mr. Weber, your example of two people who make all those decisions, I'm not okay with that. That's not the way it should work, and as the treasurer, I don't want to have that kind of power. I have some suggestions, and I think I know the ways to offer those. But I think as a board, we should work together, and I think it's okay to have outside input. But I think that we should think about what we want to do, and we should do our evaluation, and we should be able to give Mr. Schulte a clear direction of where the board wants to go, because one more time, it's he who brought us a suggestion. And he's going to go with whatever we want to do, but we can't have it all of our ways. And the idea, we'll bring forward a suggestion, and that's not okay, but don't bring forward a suggestion, and we're not being proactive. And so I think we've had our say. I think we should think about it. I think we should discuss it in November.
Jim, anything else further you had? Is that the last year calendar?
Well, just, Mr. Chair, can I comment really quick? I don't know how far down that would put if we waited until November and go. I don't know that you're going to hash out what needs to be hashed out in a board evaluation. And so I don't know if I agree that that just seems like kicking the can down the road to me. And you wanted to get working on the committee soon, yes? And so I would be more inclined to maybe have a on the board work session. Maybe all of us take the time to kind of go through the priorities that are outlined in DBC, policy DBC, as how the district budget priorities fall per policy, and then maybe come to the work session with some of our ideas of how we are looking at, how we look at that, and then consider the committee in the hybrid way that Jenny mentioned, which would be to have board input, a board member on the committee, and maybe more of an outline of what the committee looks like. Is the committee just sitting down brainstorming and then they come up with a list? Are they voting on their priorities? What does it look like? And I think with more clarity, that would be easier to move forward. I just don't want to get involved in trying to hash something out through a board evaluation that doesn't maybe necessarily have to go that route, because I'm not saying that I'm opposed to a committee. I just want to have an idea of what its goals are, and I would like to have the board's goals before we go with the committee, if that makes sense.
In looking at these committees in the past, some of the things that have been very powerful that the committees have brought to the board is,
I apologize. The committee work, they come up with the ideas, they can attach dollar figures to those ideas, and then there's almost a menu of different things that the board could consider and prioritize and have good, meaningful discussion about. We're not going to be able to do that here, get all of that information. I agree, we need to provide him some good priorities going forward when it relates to budget cuts. He and his staff have that power to go out and say, okay, this is what it is, and this is what it costs, board. This is where you can make your cuts. I don't see them as a voting committee or anything else. I really see them as information gathering and providing good resources and good information for us to make good, sound decisions on. That's, I guess, what I envision in what he's talked about. If I'm totally wrong or off base, please let me know. But that's kind of what I see. And I think that if there was presence by a board member, then everything's balanced. It stays in check, and somebody can come back and report, this is what's happened. This is what's being discussed. And they're going to crunch things, but it just gives a perspective or a way to make decisions quicker based on what the priorities are.
So can I ask a question then, the way you're seeing this? There's a group, and please, if I'm mischaracterizing it, correct me, okay? But a group of people are sitting around saying, these are some priorities, we need to go out and look for where the cuts come, how much would this affect that, what is this ultimate outcome, is if we have these effects, and then they would report to us what they found in doing that. Is that kind of how you're saying it?
That's how I see it, but I guess I need to ask Mr. Schulte if
So-
that is the question.
Well, okay, so why aren't we that group of people? I mean, right? Can't we sit in a room as a board and say, these are what the effects are. Hey, we need to find other information. Please use your staff to find that information and give it to us. We're looking at this, we're looking at that. Why do we need another, and I'm not asking sarcastically, I'm really not, I promise you. But why do we need another group of people to do what I see as our job and come to us with the work that we could be doing ourselves?
I don't disagree at all with you on that, but I think that maybe right now we're too far down the road and too close to planning the next budget. I think ideally, if this board has never worked on budget priorities before, maybe that's something that we need to do and give the big overall view of what those priorities are, and then we give that information to Mr. Schulte and say, these are our 3 top priorities, and this is where we fund. If it doesn't fall within these priorities, come back to us with this information. We're not going to be able to do the research. We can't dig down deep into what they have. We can give them overall guidelines, I think, for what we want. But if we haven't done that yet, I think we're too far out there.
Well, I think if Mr. Schulte brings his staff and the community together and he says, okay, we have this $1 million number that we need to come up with, Mr. Wood knows his school a lot better than I would as far as brainstorming how we might possibly come about it. So bringing ideas from the staff forward for us to consider I don't know. I think it makes sense. But I'm going to bring this to a head. So, do we want to talk about it at the next work session? Yeah. Okay. There you go. Is there anything else to bring before the board? Well, of course you can, Mr. Weber. I heard real quick, though, is all
I think there's a misconception here that you're going to have this committee, would have a whole lot of latitude in making these. What it comes down to in a school situation, seen it a million times, is that the negotiated agreement is what you're looking at. So if you have 83% of your staff and benefits there, and the other 17%, you know what you're going to be able to cut from 17%. You can get somewhat creative with that. But when you go in there, you're going to take the younger teachers are going to be riffed. So that there's very little wiggle room. There's no room for really being very creative about it.
Thank you. Is there anything else to be brought before the board?
I would just add, though, I don't have difficulty to walk away thinking that the idea of the committee is getting shot down. I mean, I think it is a great idea, and I would just add to Billy's question about why aren't we doing the work ourselves. I think some of what we're missing, too, and I'm trying to be objective about it, is that budget cuts are hard, and they're hard for the community, they're hard for employees, and so I think having people on committees that understand why they're happening or have participated in that process, it is important to helping offset some of the hardship that comes with not knowing or not understanding. So I do understand where you were going with that, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. We're adjourned. I was afraid they were going to comment. No, yeah, visitor comments. I was trying to shut us off, not the public. Please.
Well, as you know, I feel very passionate about what goes on in our district, and I do appreciate everything you people do. Really, I truly do, even though sometimes I get a little hot under the collar and tell you what I think. But I think we're very, very lucky to have 10 really fine candidates running for the position of trustees, for 4 positions. I think we're really, really lucky. And I think that each one of them brings something really special to the public for the vote, for their consideration. And what has happened today has been very distressing to me with Mr. Trotter and the Cody Educational Association endorsing 4 candidates specifically. That's a plus for them, and I think it's been very harmful to the others who are very, very fine people and very qualified. And using the resources of the district has been, I think, cast a shadow on him and also cast a shadow on you because it violated policy. And I think, like, laws have a purpose. Policy has a purpose. If you violate the law, there is a consequence. If you violate and abuse a policy, what is the policy? I mean, what use is the policy? I mean, all you have to do is say, you're sorry. Whoops, I made a mistake. If there's not some teeth in the policy to prevent this, it could happen again because people, especially during election year, everyone is very passionate about what's happening in this community and in the country. And you see this same thing happening in the government right now. Like policy, they break policy. Oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that. I just think I would like to see the board really consider what happens if policies are violated and abused, because they're there for a purpose, and I really respect them, and I'm glad you work on them and perfect them and review them because it's for everyone's benefit to have guidelines. And I just feel badly that this has happened. Thank you for your attention.
Any other public comment?
Even though I spoke earlier, can I do it again? Okay, really quick. It was interesting, and I appreciate you guys being open and transparent, letting us come and listen, because we learn a lot about what happens. And a couple of things, I had no idea, and I didn't know Carol was going to speak, but I had no idea of the email thing going on, or what happened, or what even was said in the email with the CEA. But I did find it interesting that a policy was discussed, it was determined that it was abused or broken, and yet there didn't seem to be any consequences or any methodology of going forward on how to keep that from happening again, or how to give some type of solving to the issue, or maybe even some type of, I appreciate the fact that you made the comments that you had contacted the people that were hurt or offended or perhaps contacted. But anyway, I just think there ought to be something more than just the policy was broken and it was ended. And that was the end of the discussion. The other things I thought was interesting, and I appreciated Ms. Simone saying that y'all really needed to delve into the budget priorities as a group. I was kind of surprised and shocked that that is not something that was typically done, that y'all had not done it in the last 2 years, as Mr. Strumke mentioned. And I just wondered, and I don't know if you have to answer this or not, but it would just be something I would be interested in knowing, is if that's something that is part of what the board's supposed to do. I know y'all were going over what the board is earlier when Mr. Strumke was talking about it in the law and in the policy. And is that part of the definition of the board and the requirements of the board, is to go through and have an understanding and prioritization of the expenses and of the budget. And then lastly, when we're talking about the students, and you're going through the actual and the rounding and all those things that have to do with the homeschool and virtual and basically non-Park 6 kids that live in the district, I would just encourage you to, I liked Ms. Simone when she was saying that she looked at the different Wyoming statutes. And there are statutes that seem to not give much leeway as far as denying the education and admitting those students. And the fact that even there's a statute that says the only reason you can deny them is if they've gone out of the 12th grade or if they're physically or mentally incapable. And so then so you've got that statute, and then on the other hand, you're trying to create minimums or who can't participate. And so I encourage you just to look at all those, and I appreciate the fact that y'all kind of stopped, slowed down, and said, hey, let's get the rest of the information. So I really appreciate that very much. And thank you for letting me speak.
So for the benefit of the public, when a employee of the school district violates a policy, it becomes a personnel matter, and it's not discussed. That's the frustration with the whole process. And anybody that belongs to the city or any other large organization, everybody perceives something that's happened, and maybe the perception is nothing happened or it's going to happen again because you're not doing anything. We can't. That just stops. The curtain comes down, and you guys aren't involved with anything that happens further. That doesn't mean nothing happens.
That's good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, anybody else? I mean, not you guys, but anybody else out here. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you. Oh, we have another meeting. You guys can go. We're not going.